Street, Warren, Rhode Island, Plat 2, Lot 1. This is a public hearing. We are being asked for a recommendation only to the zoning board for converting existing commercial space to residential. And so take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. John McCoy for the applicant Tourister Mill. Good evening to you and to all the members of the board. As you know, Mr. Chairman, because you were here last time, we can go around. This is really a request for modification, further modification of the special use permit that was originally granted back in 2014, when Tourister Mill first came into being. We've been before this board and the zoning board twice before. And I was looking at my record last time, December 28, 2020, to convert some of the commercial space to residential. The original special use permit for this project had a certain number of commercial space and residential space. So to change that, we've had to come before this board and the zoning board, done that twice before. Tonight, this time we're just here to convert about 2,500 square feet of space. It was formerly a commercial unit. Fielding International was there. They vacated the space. The demand for the residential units has always remained strong. So that is why we're here to convert that space to 3 residential units there. Again, as before, no exterior construction, it's all interior renovations, so nothing changing there. And the parking is still good. I provided the parking analysis, as I always do in the application. Actually, for residential, it's less parking required than commercial. So we're still within the requirements originally set by the boards back in 2014. I know you've got a full agenda tonight. I've got Chris Lewis here from Tourister Mill, who can answer questions, and I'd be glad to answer any further questions as well.
Well, again, I think one of the concerns the last time was that the residential space, the commercial space transforming into residential, that it was above the floodplain.
Yes, and that did come up when we first came for the first conversion back in 2019, and it is. They had to raise up a couple of feet, the first floor, to meet that. And Chris can confirm that was done, and this will be the same thing here.
So that portion of the building.
You have to introduce yourself.
Chris Lewis, Brady Sullivan. I'm an architect. And that portion of the building is above the floodplain. In the previous application, there was some portions that were below that we had to raise. In this particular case, it's existing above the floodplain.
Great.
Yep.
Any questions or concerns? This is really.
The only question I have is, I had a hard time in the copy that I received in the PDF figuring out which space we're talking about.
So can I?
Yeah, if you don't mind coming up. The dark blue.
Yeah,
Okay,
so these ones have been converted already.
Down here.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So just for the record, in case everybody can hear that I believe, if I got north correct, that is the northwest corner of the building, very northwest piece there, that little corner there.
Are any of those new units going to be low or moderate income?
No, Mr. Madden, this was approved as a market rate development. It has always operated that way, and we need to have the staffing. Chris can elaborate on that.
I mean, a majority of our portfolio is market rate, and that's what our staff is up to speed on down there. So we'd like to just maintain that going forward. Thank you.
Any further questions? I'll make a motion to recommend.
Mr. Chair, I believe this is a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this? First of all, we have to open it as a public. Can we open this as a public meeting?
Second.
Terry makes the motion, Blake seconds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does anyone now have anything to say regarding this request? Seeing no hands, we will close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Terry
Good.
and Blake
I
second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now I'd make the motion that we recommend that the zoning board approve this request for the existing commercial space to become residential. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Blake, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Hey, good luck. The next item, is a request for change in allowed use, the owner's Old Warren Marina, 66 Church Street, Plat 4, Lot 70. This is a public hearing. The way this goes, for those of you who may not have come to a planning board meeting before, is that we will hear from the applicant, their proposal. The board will, can ask questions, but generally what I'd like to do is to have the applicant do the presentation. Those from the public who would like to comment on this application one way or another will be heard. The board at that point will let those folks speak. I would ask that you keep your comments to about 3 minutes. And if someone has said something before that you agree with, to avoid having this drag out unnecessarily, they would just say, I agree with what's been said. And, you know, that doesn't mean that you just have to sit down. I mean, you can say, and here's why. But again, we're looking to keep this short and succinct. We did receive letters prior to the application, which were distributed to all the planning board members. So everyone got a chance to look at those prior to. Again, though, that information can be conveyed in this public hearing. So I'm not saying if you sent in a letter, you can't say anything. You certainly can. And I ask that we keep this hearing civil, and that we respect each other in terms of this request, and either approval, either support or opposition to it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just identify myself for the record, my name is Andrew Teitz, T-E-I-T-Z. I'm an attorney with offices at 2 William Street in Providence, and I'm representing several objectors here tonight, including the Massasoit Historical Association of Warren, Brant Heckert and Eileen Collins, Paul Eidman and Leanne Heroyd, William and Linda Blake. And I will have a presentation in opposition to this, including witnesses. So I just want you to be aware of that. Obviously, I would keep it to 3 minutes if they'll keep their presentation to 3 minutes. But
no, well, I think in a case like that,
I know you're talking for the general, for
it
the
would be,
public, so that's why I
it would
want to
also
let
be
you know.
your witnesses. I would ask to
Right.
keep it as I would ask the applicant the
That's
same
fine.
thing.
And we will have written materials as well, so you'll have those to follow along.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Attorney John Shikachi, Role Officer 51 Jefferson Boulevard in Warwick, Rhode Island. Here this evening representing the applicant, Old Warren Marina LLC. The two principals of Marina are here this evening, if the board has any questions for them. And as I'm sure you know, we're here seeking permission to allow a lease of part of the building to a waterfront brewery. So there's a restriction within the easement that they agreed to when they bought the property years back. And it's our burden to try to demonstrate to this board for a recommendation that what we're doing is consistent with related commercial uses. So I think it's important as part of our presentation to, in my opinion, to bring up one of the owners, tell a little about the history of the use that's been there, and then bring up the applicant's potential leasee and tell the board what he's planning to doing if he's approved, hours of operation, what type of business it is. And then I think most importantly, bring up our historian to tell us if what we're doing meets the purpose intent of what they're trying to protect. So that's what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you in that order.
Okay, thank you.
So why don't you come up, Scott, and give your name and address for the record, et cetera, and be sworn if they're required to be.
Good evening, everyone. Scott Del Silvera, one of the principals and owners of the property at 66 Church Street. I live at 12 Barton Avenue in Warren. I've been there my whole life. Well, I've lived in Warren my whole life, so I'm a Warren guy. So today what you're going to hear is some testimony from an expert, my attorney speaking, and some other people, and I'm sure some opposition too. but I want everyone to understand that what we're presenting tonight isn't this big change. I'm not intending on changing anything. I'm intending on bringing something back. The working waterfront is important to me. It's important to my family. It's important to my partners. It's important to the community, I think. The historical significance of it is very important. And we've owned the property since 2002. We've had multiple businesses there that are water related. And I believe that a distillery, brewery is very much in kind with the working waterfront. Historically, it has been. And like I said, I'd like to bring it back. We're not looking for this. We're not throwing anyone off the property. We'd like to keep everyone that's there. We'd like to keep the marina the way it is. The only thing that we have is a small space in the front of one of the historical buildings that used to house the Warren Yacht Club. Warren Yacht Club has since dissolved. Due to, we had Bob Healy was one of our Commodores. We had some other people that became a Commodore. We were doing pretty well with it. We just couldn't get anybody to do it, non-for-profit. Just couldn't get anybody to actually put the work in. And unfortunately, I wish I could have, but I have so many things going on and so many things on my plate that I couldn't take over the Warren Yacht Club. So that has been since dissolved, and the place has been pretty much vacant since. We have a boat tour business there. We have a boat repair shop there. It's always been there. We have multiple slips for recreational use. We have about 240 linear feet of commercial slips that I don't think people realize, but there are other businesses that are there, not cohoggers, but other businesses that do boat repair, and they bring their boats from actually Bristol, and they rent the space from us. They've been there for a while. And we have a big piece of property that has plenty of parking. It wouldn't impact the town. And it's not a really big ask for what it is. I mean, I understand the sensitivity of the neighbors. I've been there a long time, and I know all the neighbors, and and I probably know 90% of the opposition, and that's okay. And I know there's a lot of people that are for it too. So what I'm here to do today is just state the facts. And if there's any questions from opposition or non-opposition of the board or anybody else, I'm here to answer them to the best that I can. And that's pretty much it.
So while I have you, I'm sure you'll speak again, but while I have you, above and beyond the use issue, I'm sure some of the concerns are going to be parking. That's always a sensitive for any project, never mind this particular area where I know parking is tight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the parking you have there now? And if the board and the council approves what you want, what will the effect be on that parking?
Okay, so the distillery / brew house, ale house would require about 8 to 10 spots, according to the ordinance. We have way more than that. We have a parking plan that shows way more than that, which we're not here to present that today. Obviously, we're here for the recommendation towards this use. So that's number one. And we're not asking for this casino. It's a small section of the building, one of the buildings, and it is what it is. So the parking, as you know, a lot of people here know, I know, that parking is very difficult in the town of Warren because of a lot of the businesses in the area. And I get it, but we always find a place to park. Out of towners, in towners, we walk a lot. I know a lot of people walk a lot in the area. And I think that with this walking easement around our property that nobody really utilizes except a few that I notice, because I'm there a lot, would be utilized more. And that's what the property was meant to be. It was meant to be utilized and given to the community partially and enjoyed. And I think it can be that again, like it was before I was here and before anyone in this room was here.
Well, thank you. I'm sure we'll have more questions for you as the night goes on, Scott. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to bring up Mr. Amaral, Kevin Amaral, who is the possible tenant. And I think it's important for him to tell us a little bit about the type of business he's planning on operating there, what's entailed as part of it, and the hours of operation, et cetera.
Good evening, Kevin Amaral, 19 Layla Jean Drive, Bristol, Rhode Island. I am the owner and operator of Vigilant Brewing in Bristol. Here today to express our interest in moving part of our operation to the Warren waterfront. been a lifelong Bristolian, but grew up down the road here at Emerald's Fish and Chips. My uncles and my grandparents instilled in me at a very young age that, business is only as good as the community around it and how important it is to be part of the community. So, I've taken that throughout my business venture, and it's been a big part of our success in Bristol. Recently, we've been looking into applying for a distillery license, but we need a little more space. And given the history of the Warren waterfront and distilling and the space that we need, we don't need a ton of space. And this just kind of fits the bill. So I know most people might be a little standoffish when they have brewery, distillery, or just another bar, but we've ran a very responsible and professional business for the last 3 years in Bristol, family friendly, community oriented. We've done a lot of community fundraising, and we give back as much as we can. And, we haven't had any issues in Bristol. And again, this is just the whole history behind the Warren waterfront, and the next steps of our business just kind of go hand in hand. So
Mr. Amaral, if this came to be, tell us a little bit about what would be a typical day there on a weekend, who would come, how many people would be working there, what the hours of operation would be, and what you envision.
Employees max would be 2 to 3. The operating hours would be similar to what we have in Bristol right now. Wednesday, we pretty much operate Wednesday through Sunday. Wednesday and Thursday, 3 to 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday, about noon to 10 p.m. And Sundays, 12 to 5 or 12 to 6.
And you actually make the alcohol there, the beer and the rum, things of that nature, and you're planning on doing that right on site?
Yes, correct. Currently, we do the brewing in Bristol. Warren would entail a little bit of brewing, but mostly focus on distilling.
And with any food component?
We would like to offer some light pub fare, nothing extravagant. We're not trying to serve big stuffed lobsters and filet mignon, just something to allow people to pick on if they're hungry.
And you understand that if we get over the hurdle of the use, you have to go through the normal process of licensing and any other variances you may need or special use permits?
Yes.
Just a quick question. This is the first time we've heard distillery as opposed to brewery. Because in your letter, it said brewery restaurant. What is the square footage that you would anticipate for a distillery?
In this location?
Yeah.
It's about just under 1,300 square feet. That's the given space.
What's the total square footage of the property, the building itself?
I believe it was like 3,500.
The building is about 70,000. A little between 70,000.
70,000. Then how much did you say you were looking to occupy?
The space we're looking at is only 1,300.
1,300.
Now I wanted to differentiate. One is how much room would the distillery take versus a restaurant and the ancillary.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I think he means in total.
Yeah, most of it is actually done right there. So the distilling part would just be, you're gonna have barrels and barrel racks. The equipment is minimal. It'd be definitely a smaller operation. So out of that whole, we could probably operate within a 300 square foot space to make the product. None of that will be happening while there's any patrons there. That would all be done. In the first part of distilling, a lot of it is time. So part of it, the first year would basically, we would be within the first year, we'd be looking to get a blending license because it takes time in a barrel. So we'd distill it, put it in the barrels. It would have to sit there for about a year or so until it's ready to serve. So that's the process. We would then get a blending license, which would allow us to serve similar products, but a main brand. And then after our products are ready to come out of the barrels and be packaged, then we would give up that blending license.
Obviously, he'll answer any other questions in the future. So at this time, I'd like to bring in Patrick Conley as an expert in obviously history, but in this particular area. So we've asked Professor Dr. Conley to analyze our request from a historical perspective and to summarize that for us. He's done it in writing, but I know he only has to now. I'll hand it out, but he can tell us verbally what his position is, if what we're doing meets the purpose intent of the relief we need. So why don't I hand this out, even though
Yeah,
you really can't read it now, but you could follow along. You want to
makes
keep
good bedtime readings. Would have taken me probably 15 to 20 minutes to deliver, and therefore the 3-minute limitation would be sufficient for me outlining it.
So Dr. Conley, why don't you just fill us in your involvement in the project, what we asked you to do for us, what you found, and any conclusions you make that if what we're doing is consistent with the relief we feel we need for this project.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kachi. I was called in basically as to provide a historical perspective on that waterfront. I had some familiarity with it. Yes.
Could you please identify yourself so we can have it in the minutes?
Well, yes, certainly. I thought he did, but
Yeah,
Dr. Patrick Conley
From where?
from Bristol as a resident, practiced in East Providence, MA and PhD from the University of Notre Dame, law degree from Suffolk University, on and on.
Thank you.
Basically, the conclusion that I reached as a result of this survey of the Warren waterfront, that it was a very diverse in its uses. The heading of my statement, Warren and its waterfront, a study in diversity. In some ways, the diversity stemmed from the fact that there was a merged interest on that waterfront, because Warren, founded in 1747, when the property was transferred from Massachusetts Bay to Rhode Island, with parts of Rehoboth and parts of Swansea, and all of the Massachusetts town of Barrington, which had been created in 1717, but none of Bristol. And later on in 1770, Barrington went back and became a separate town again. But Bristol owned all of what is today South Warren, all the way up, as a matter of fact, about where the water treatment plant is today. And as a result, the Bristol Mercantile interest played an extraordinary significant role in the development of the waterfront here in Warren, particularly James DeWolf, his family and his business interests. And DeWolf was big. He was the richest man in the United States until he eclipsed around 1820 by John Jacob Astor. So it was a major operation. And the DeWolfs not only brought molasses into Bristol for distillation into rum, used in the slave trade for a time and then used for other commercial purposes, but the rum was distilled here in Warren as well. I have sections in my narrative that talk about the rum being unloaded in ships, DeWolf and other ships being built actually up in Swansea, coming down the Palmer River, and a tremendous activity during the first 3 decades of the 19th century. And it was a very bustling waterfront. Gin was produced here. There were taverns along here for the sailors, very heavy residential concentration west of Water Street. So a lot of activity of all kinds, diverse kinds, within the waterfront area. In 1830 down to about 1850, Warren became the leading whaling port in Rhode Island. And also after that, the sealing capital of Rhode Island with the hunting of seals. So the waterfront was extraordinarily busy. And in addition to the commercial activities, you had naval activities as well. The DeWolfs were in league with the Perrys. Christopher Perry came with James DeWolf. They built the General Green here for the quasi-war with France in 1798. Oliver Hazard Perry helped him. Perry comes back as the hero of the War of 1812, builds the Chippewa, a 400-ton frigate, and the Perrys are here as well. And Warren is thriving in shipbuilding, in whaling, and also in the sealery, but it maintained all of those other commercial uses, particularly the manufacture and the distribution of rum. And I have some conclusions in there based upon all the activity that took place. there was manufacturing, there was commercial uses, including business, there were residential uses. So it was a flourishing waterfront. And basically, the individuals who are here before you today believe that what they're attempting to do is consistent with the history of the waterfront as I've outlined it for you in this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Conley.
If I may, I saw in Exhibit B in your conclusions, you talked about some historical research showed that there was taverns, one example, the Captain. Billy Contact- So the key issue from a historical perspective is we have to show that what we're proposing would be considered historically consistent with water-related commercial uses. That's really, in my opinion, the key.
Right, I mean, I understand that, but to go back to the DeWolf's making rum, that was for the slave trade. So, you know, it's, you can only go so far back in
Right.
history
Sure.
to justify the existence of certain activities. I mean, if rum is okay, then slaving should be as well.
Yeah.
Whaling and sealing, which were both
I think
problematic.
one's outlawed and one's
So
not.
again, I think, you know, I understand that there were historic uses here, but there also, that doesn't necessarily mean that that was what was in the concept of waterfront, water dependent or water related, that because something existed there in the, up to the 1820s when DeWolf went bankrupt because he got his slave trade shut down as a result of it being a horrific business and was able to come back. But again, I think, you know, that it's important to be understanding of history. I'm not condemning those folks, but I'm also not celebrating them for the activities that today would be completely unacceptable. So that's a concern that I would have about a historic perspective. If you're going to bring up the DeWolfs and their rum as an example of why a distillery would fit here, I can't, that to me is inappropriate because
I
we
understand.
can't talk about, we can certainly talk about it, but we would not say that this is somehow a right or an appropriate use.
Well, the rum continued and on January 1st, 1808, Congress banned Americans from engaging in any of the slave trade. But they had the distilleries there, they had the contacts with the West Indies, and so the rum, the trade in molasses continued all the way down through the 30s and 40s and all. So it was a business that was started, but what didn't turn off as a result of the fact that the slave trade was banned.
Right, and stay for a second. And if I may, I know the old history, maybe it's not as important, but he does have knowledge of the more recent history as well. So doctor, the main burden we have is, will what we're trying to do this evening significantly alter, destroy, or compromise the character of the waterfront historic district as a working waterfront, in your opinion?
No, I don't think that would be the case. As a matter of fact, the diversity is the key. Even as you go up the waterfront today, you've got the Guild, which is a brewery up adjacent to the
Actually, I don't
manufacturing.
believe the Guild is a brewery. They serve beer there, but
Yeah.
they're not brewing it there. Is that,
They brew.
they're brewing it
Oh,
there?
yeah.
No, that's not my understanding is that they're brewing it in Pawtucket where their headquarters is and they're bringing the beer there to the Guild.
Their website doesn't indicate that, but
Well-
at any rate, I'm a teetotaler. So I'm only speaking history. I don't go to Chris.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, and he's available for any other further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Should we ask some questions?
Yeah, if it's relevant to what their presentation, yeah.
Can the building owner come back up, please?
Absolutely. Scott, he has a question for you.
Sure, can you clarify the building size for me again?
It's 100 by 100 and I believe 18 by 60, so it's about 7,000.
Okay, and then 1,300 square feet. Is there gonna be like any outdoor consumption or outdoor entertainment areas associated with this?
No.
So you expect the outdoors to remain in the same condition it
So-
currently is?
Yeah, so currently the recreational boat users do outdoor recreational boating.
Well, yeah.
And they drink out there and stuff, private property, so I guess they can, right, legally? But they do, the boaters do. I believe this will serve the boaters also. We have a transit slip there that people would probably utilize to come buy the rum, buy the brew, Warren Brew, whatever it's gonna be called.
And then how long has this space been vacant for you?
Over well, actually, it's seasonal right now. And there's a section there that can continue to be seasonal for the boat tours. We have a boat touring lady that does stuff there now. She does a pretty good job. And hopefully she stays. And we have space for that too.
So it wouldn't really impact any current operations?
No, we're not intending on changing any of the current users.
All right, I
Space that
appreciate
you're
you.
discussing, is that
I'm sorry?
the space you're discussing, is that the Warren Boat Club?
Used to be the Warren Yacht Club.
Yacht Club?
Yeah, used to be. I don't know if you've been there, but used to be.
Did the yacht club used to include a restaurant with alcohol?
So we used to do like alcohol and provisions for events. It wasn't open it was open, but not on, like, with alcohol provision license on a daily basis. We've had a lot of uses there, like some water related.
There were, when CHOP came before us, they claimed that they were gonna have 6 spots in your area that would be used for overflow parking. Are those still
There's
there?
actually 8 and they're no longer there. We chose not to have them.
Okay, so that's an issue for CHOP, clearly, because that was part of the agreement was that they would have these spots at your location for parking. So I don't know what happened there.
Mr. Chair, if my memory's correct, I believe that
Tenants.
maybe there was a condition on it that there'd be a good faith, commercial effort to retain those spots. It wasn't something that was certainly, 100% of that, and I know there's some discretionary and some good faith in terms of keeping those spots, but we will have to look into those.
Right. I
So
think
the
one of the points here is that when we go through this process, people make promises or not promises, sort of promises that they are going to behave in a particular way and that, here's 1,300 square feet that we're going to use for the distillery. But my if one of your tenants was to leave, that would make sense economically, potentially, to expand the distillery business or the restaurant into that space, which is, in this case, immediately adjacent to the water. The water dependent and water related uses that are part of the deed, the agreement when selling this was water related and water dependent. Distilleries don't need water to operate. They don't need to be immediately on water. A marina does, obviously, and that is, to my mind, what this this particular space, your space, is dedicated to, is water dependent, water related. Waterfront dining just means that you've got a view of the water. You can do that virtually.
Well, it's not really waterfront dining. And most marinas in the state of Rhode Island and other states have little pubs or eat or drink establishments within them for the boating recreational boaters. So this is, I believe, is in like kind of a working waterfront because they're gonna be making the rum there, which is working. As the testimony you heard, some may agree that it was during the sleep, and I totally get it. But that's not what we're pitching. We're saying that, manufacturing rum on the waterfront was the use. We're also saying that the working waterfront had establishments similar to that in the past, present, and hopefully in the future. As far as parking goes, CHOP did park some cars there. Actually, not a lot of them were used, but a lot of people park there that are supposed to park there. And, people visit restaurants, even neighbors will have cars parked there, and it happens. That needs to be modified, and I'll have to change that and make sure that we can keep track of who's parking there once there is use. But there are a lot of people that just park, and that's not fair either. And
Yeah, I mean-
it's not fair either. So when Chomp asked to use parking spots, we said, yeah, go ahead, use it. Because nobody's parking, and we have so many parking spots. And I thought it was good for the town to have local establishments full of people and buying stuff in our town and supporting our town, be it from the arts to the drinking or the restaurants or whatever you want to call them, taverns, whatever. So that's where we're at. So
But do you anticipate that this is going to be mostly to serve the boating community that comes in?
I believe the majority of it will be, because the majority of the boaters that come in, and that are there, will be definitely part of this establishment's growth and success. As well as I think a lot of the neighborhood people too. Some may not want to go there today, but I think eventually they will. And I think it'll be a spot that, will be full of life again with that and encompassing some of the distilling and the drinking portion of it, if I may say.
Have you explored whether or not there are any licenses?
This is a different type of license. This is more of a brewing, manufacturing, and distilling.
Well, if you're gonna be serving liquor, you've gotta have a
I-
license for that.
So with all due respect, sir, I'm not an expert when it comes to that. I'm just a landlord, real
Okay.
estate guy that loves this type of stuff.
I understand that, but if there's no licenses available.
Well, that's not what we're here for today, I don't think, but.
Well, was the purpose of today not really to validate what's going in there and their operations, but just to determine if it's appropriate and then with Allison's memo, make sure we're aligned with what was meant to be down there as far as the waterfront activities.
You're making a recommendation.
Correct.
You're making a recommendation to the town council on whether or not, you agree that this use is appropriate.
On the
There.
general use, so not as
The
far
use,
as like
I
the
mean,
operations.
Specifics of parking, that would come, if the town council were to approve the use. They would need to go back for a special use permit application with the zoning board.
And then
So it's more about discussing the proposed use.
And if this was approved, does this follow this property? Like what, if this recommendation goes forward with town council, will this forever follow the property and they'll be allowed to sustain this type of operation there?
Okay with that issue.
There's a high likelihood that the use, specific use that is allowed can follow as long as it doesn't get abandoned. So certainly something. to
So
consider.
once we've done it, it stays.
Well, go ahead.
Along that line, is it something that is limited to the entire property, or can you limit it to the specific area and retain because it's an easement, right? Can you record an easement that identifies specific constraints in various aspects of the property?
Correct. It's basically a public easement that the property has in favor of the public / the town. And the applicant has to come before the town and get permission for this particular change of use. And that's what the applicant is here doing. If any other use besides a restaurant, then certainly would have to follow the same application process that the applicant is following.
Any other questions? I'd like to open it.
Chairman, I have a couple of questions. Should I put them through you?
Well, why don't we do it in the once we open up to the public hearing, which we're about to do.
All right, well, there were specific questions with this person here, with this, Mr. Di Solera, but that's.
Go through the planning board.
Let's go through the planning board. Let's, Mr. Chair, due respect.
Yeah, Andy, we're more than happy to
Let the
answer questions all
application-
night. We're not gonna hide them. Give us a minute. We're more than happy to answer the questions during the public hearing that anyone, including Andy, has.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll wait for the public hearing, which is now.
Need a motion to open.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Make a motion to open this as a public hearing.
Second.
Second, was that Rick?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so.
Thank you. For the record, again, Andrew Tights. As I said, I'm representing the Massasoit Historical Association of Warren, which owns the Maxwell House right there on the property. I also represent 3 property owners in immediate proximity. And most importantly, property owners who also have easements on their property. When this was done, when Luther Blount gave his $1 million, when this property was bought by the public trust for public lands, excuse me, and then sold back with these easements, there were easements that were very similar placed on all of the surrounding properties. Now, my clients who bought residential properties didn't have restrictions that they allowed residential use, and the property fronting on Water Street allowed just general commercial use. But it was a common scheme of development, and you'll hear more about that for people about how this came about. I know many of you were here, but I think some of you probably were not here at the time 20 years ago. And this was a common scheme of development to do this whole area, and they all had these historic preservation easements. And my clients bought their properties knowing the restrictions that they were subject to, and knowing that this property was going to be subject to these restrictions as well. And they relied on it to their detriment and bought it. Now, I understand that's not part of your issue tonight, but I just want to explain that. Obviously, if this does go to litigation and whatnot, that would be part of the issue. But I also want to explain emotionally, you know, they believe that everybody should play by the rules. These 2 people bought this property in 2002 with this particular easement in place. They knew it was restricted to water dependent and water related uses. And I think we'll have some more testimony about that, water dependent and water related and what they mean. But that was part of the restriction when they bought it. And they've been here before, particularly in 2008, asking for permission to put a restaurant in there, which was recommended against, and it was denied. So this isn't something that is a surprise. Oh, we bought this property, we didn't know it had this restriction. They knew it right from the beginning. And therefore, that is why our concern, being upset, unhappy with it, that it's unfair there. And also because my clients and a lot of other people who were involved in this put a lot of effort into preserving the working waterfront in Warren. Now, there's very few communities in Rhode Island that have a working waterfront left. It's not, Warren is one of them. And it's nice that you have an area of the town that provides economic ability for people who don't have college degrees to get a job that's not just being a waitress, but to be able to have a good blue-collar job and raise a family and support a family. You've got the shipyard, you've got the 2 Blount enterprises with the different parts of the family, the shipyard and the seafood. And then you have a lot of other smaller enterprises along the water you've had for years. I read Mr. Conley's exhibit, and interestingly enough, I think he proves our case. His exhibit is all about how Warren was a shipbuilding and shipping community, and that's what it was about. There's, other than this tangential stuff that they happened to build ships, that the molasses came to Bristol where it was distilled, there's nothing in there. There's no proof of any distillery in Warren here. There's no indication of a location of a brewery or a distillery in Warren. In fact, just the opposite. You built the ships that carried the cargo. That's the shipbuilding. That's the marine heritage of Warren that we're trying to protect. And that's specifically where we come to this easement. It's a historic preservation easement. And the historic preservation is 2 elements. It's the building. And there's very detailed language about it in the easement, about the building and what can and can't be done. Goes on for pages and pages about that with all the standards. It adds extra standards from the Secretary of Interior about that. But it also deals with the uses and specifically says that. Now, I know you were provided by the applicant with 1 page from the easement. Have you received the entire 15-page easement?
I mean, I've looked at it.
Okay, well, I would like to introduce it as an exhibit then. Okay, all right. If I may?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the only thing to be aware of is that we're not gonna sit here and read it.
I think it's unlikely that you're going to decide this tonight. Unless you decide in the negative, I think you're gonna wanna look at this and consider all that's presented here.
We have
Um,
received a synopsis from our acting planner.
Yes.
We've all, so I mean, there is information, I think, that the planning board is able to deal with. Again, I
Well,
wouldn't
with,
count on not having a decision tonight.
well, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, circulated. Yeah. On one page, so.
Yeah.
It was multiple.
We're a well-educated board on this.
Okay, all right, well then fine. And you also have the memo from the planner, which I think is actually very good. It really nails down some of the stuff that's key here, when you're looking at this. I think, so I won't introduce that as an exhibit since you've got that before you anyway. But I think it's really important. Your planner highlighted certain things, which I think are very good too. But I want to note on the page, on page 2 of her thing, where she's quoting from page 145 of the comprehensive plan about Warren's historic waterfront. And she highlighted preserving the working waterfront and its existing water-dependent businesses, while also promoting public access and recreational enjoyment to this natural and scenic resource is a priority of the town. But I think it's important to look at the last 2 sentences as well of that paragraph. The working waterfronts necessary to support these industries, such as docks, loading facilities, or seafood processing plants, are often at risk of displacement by non-water dependent uses, such as restaurants or condominium development. And then the last sentence of that paragraph, once working waterfronts are converted to other non-water dependent uses, the town will not be able to attract those industrial uses that are water dependent. An expert on industrial waterfronts for New Bedford and actually all over the Northeast, Frank Shahadi, had a statement that says, I remember, once you turn the cucumber into a pickle, you can never go back to a cucumber. So I think it's important to look at those things and to hold that aspect. Before I get into calling out some stuff, I understand, I know there are many people who sent letters, and I don't know if you want to clarify which you received, because my understanding was some letters which were received on Friday were considered too late.
There was only one letter from Valerie Talmadge that was received by the planning board secretary that did not go to the rest of the planning board, and that was because we had to put a halt somewhere.
I understand that. So
But
then,
all of the rest of those letters were presented to the planning
okay,
board.
well, I think Valerie Talmadge's letter is very important. I would like to introduce it as an exhibit, and I'd be happy to even read it in the record, or perhaps I could read some parts, because Valerie Talmadge was the person involved. She was the director of projects for the Trust for Public Land when this happened. So she has direct personal knowledge of what was involved here, as well as the fact that she's an expert in the historic preservation, that she's also been doing it. She's actually retiring just this year from Preserve Rhode Island. But I would like to make sure then that introduce it as an exhibit if it's not something you. Just so you know, I've done it as a 2-page. It's front and back, it's double-sided, trying to save what paper we can. And as I said, she was the director of projects when this happened. And she talks about how they acquired the many parcels that the developer had assembled. And from those parcels, PPL made a gift of real estate to the town of Warren of the wharf and marina parcel. PPL sold the other parcels to private buyers, all subject to preservation easements. If a parcel was along the waterfront, such as 66 Church Street, the easement included a use restriction to keep the property in water-dependent use. Requiring that the property be kept in water-dependent use was a feature, not a bug, for the waterfront protection project. The town and TPL agreed that the best way to achieve the town's goal of keeping Warren's waterfront for water-dependent use was to impose such a use restriction. Affordability is a key issue for maintaining a working waterfront. Keeping property values lower along the water means that those requiring water-dependent uses can afford property in Warren's waterfront, acknowledging that such uses cannot compete with higher value commercial and residential uses. The use restriction means the parcel is now and in the future will be available to owners who need waterfront access to continue their business. And then she points out that the easement states clearly shall be used for water-dependent or water-related commercial uses only. She says the proposal for a brewery/bar is exactly the kind of use that the town and TPL feared would happen if the parcels were sold without use restrictions. A brewery/bar is in no way dependent on being a waterfront parcel. If the town were to grant this request to change the use of the property, it would defeat a major purpose of the easement, providing for the continuation of Warren's working waterfront as a character-defining feature of the Warren Waterfront Historic District. There's no apparent public benefit for granting the change in use, and approval of the change would contravene the town of Warren's well-documented public interest in maintaining its waterfront for water-dependent uses. And then she went on to say, writing to you from my current role as Executive Director of Preserve Rhode Island, I urge the town to uphold the terms of its preservation easements. Preservation easements are important tools to achieve the objective of protecting the public interest in protecting historic properties and community characters. But they only work if their terms are enforced. Through the easement at 66 Church Street, the town's responsibility to protect the character of the Waterfront Historic District is unambiguous. The public interest in continuing the water-dependent use at 66 Church Street is well supported by multiple town plans. There is no demonstrated public interest in allowing other uses at the property at 66 Church Street, and the easement gives the town the authority to continue the water-dependent use of the parcel. So I think she sums it up. You've got both an expert in historic preservation, and you've got the person who was there when this was created. And I think those are all important parts to consider. Now, before I go further and just call my first witness, I do want to ask some questions, if I may, through the chair, whatever, hopefully, that you can ask the owner of the property to answer. One of the first ones is if we can get some clarity about where this is going. They've asked for the relief because of the easement on this particular property with the barn, but it sounds like they're using the rest of the property, particularly for parking. There's a whole nother lot there. That's lot 139 with an address of 90 Baker Street. And they haven't mentioned that at all in any of their materials, but it's all one big parking lot there. And I would request that you find out if that's going to be part of this or not. Because if it's not, then there's going to be a lot less parking available. And if it is, then that should be part of their petition as well. I also, they said they thought he said most of the business would be from transient boats.
Well, can we, let's ask the first question.
Okay, sure, if you want to.
I can respond to that. The partial has plenty of parking on the 66 Church side without utilizing the Baker Street side, because the peninsula is part of that piece and there's plenty of parking.
So,
How much?
about how much park? Yeah.
I have a parking plan here. Yes. Want to read this with me?
Pardon me?
You want to read it with me? Yeah, take a look. That's 66, all of this.
Okay, so I see 1, 2, 3 spaces.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
those
14, 15,
spaces on
16,
the
17, 18. That's part of this portion.
Are those approved by CRMC,
Yes, they are.
the parking?
This is the
spaces?
CRMC plan, actually, if you see the bottom here. It's engineered by Site Engineering, who was stamped by CRMC and Ken Cubic.
Okay,
Now, is that, just a curiosity, that's, boats are parked, are stored there now, aren't they?
No,
No.
not anymore, no.
well, that actually was gonna be one of my other questions about why no winter boat storage? Again, that's a marine,
So-
that's certainly a maritime use,
Yeah,
they used to be there.
We did have some there and they didn't pay the bill. They couldn't afford to store it there anymore, so we put out our feelers to try to get more people to store boats there. But the more boats we had stored there along the property line made the visibility of the marina from to the waterfront for the residents kind of poor. So I thought I was doing them a favor by taking the boats off.
Quick, you are able to make money.
I'm sorry,
from-
sir?
You're able to make money and income from this parcel as it exists now, based solely on water dependent uses, correct?
It's subsidized, like, it's not, for what's there, it's not at the level it should be.
Well, I mean, but there,
Oh, it should be.
so with that, in other words, if you had more people storing their boats there, more people participating in the marina.
The other problem with that is the proximity of Church Street coming off of Water Street. Bring trailers and trucks down that roadway. It would definitely, it's almost impossible to get them around the corner. So.
If I may, the other owner, like to speak.
Okay.
My name's Angelo Pieri.
Yeah.
He'll be able to answer that question most.
I own 90 Baker Street, and I also own part of 66 Church Street.
Let's just have one person at the,
If needed, we need more parking, I would definitely supply more parking at 90 Baker Street. Okay, our goal was to put the boat proving business onto 90 Baker Street, fix up the building and move it to 90 Baker Street. Other than that, and I also do most of the financing for the marina. And we're just about break even if we're lucky, between taxes that probably don't subsidize us because we're water dependent, marine related, which is a very difficult industry, kind of like in this area right now. We kind of subsidize the whole business at the marina.
I mean, that's surprising to me because marinas are generally, they've just sold most of the marinas around here to a large
Right,
corporation.
exactly. But you're talking
And the
marinas,
demand is
you're talking
high.
marinas that have 300, 250 to 500 or 600 dock slips,
And your dock slips are X, what,
20
20
docks.
commercial?
We have about 240 spots that are designated commercial docks for commercial businesses.
200 square feet,
No, 240 linear feet.
linear feet, okay, but
Right.
that's not, we're not talking about, that's not the number of actual slips.
It's
20.
20 slips
Okay,
altogether.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
through the whole complex. That's on 90 Baker and 66 Church Street.
So they're operated as one unit,
They're operated as one unit.
okay.
Exactly. And we subsidize to keep the place going as far as like dock repairs and everything else. I mean, it is extremely expensive to maintain docks. I don't know if anybody realizes that, but the value, I mean, you're talking marinas that, you know what I mean? That they sold, I mean, they are, most of them have restaurants in them actually. But also, I mean, you know, boat building repairs, I mean, that's a whole different industry, man.
Well, the building that you have there, I thought was designated the Old Harbor Marine building, the one with.
Right, so 80% or 70% of the building at 66 Church Street is boat repair.
Right. So it's a viable business right now.
Well, it's a subsidized business. It's just,
Since 2000.
we're fortunate that we both have occupations that can afford to subsidize the place. The property real value is in the property, not running the businesses that are at the property. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that when you came before us in 2008, you wanted a restaurant there, and I guess from 2008 until now, you've been functioning.
Yeah, because we can afford to function,
So in other words.
because we can subsidize it. We have businesses that are profitable that we can subsidize it to keep it going.
So you couldn't,
So, Mr. Massey, if I may. We like break even then. In 2008, I don't know, I'm trying to remember if that was the
Three Rivers.
Yeah, Three Rivers. They asked if they could rent the space from us. And that would have been a viable business to be there at the time. And we lost that business. When then Sunnyside opened up and all that stuff. We're not asking for a restaurant. That's a totally different thing.
well, that's in fact what your attorney's letter said. It said a brewery restaurant.
Okay. Okay, so.
That's what I'm operating on.
Okay. As far as financials, Mr. Perry has said that we are fortunate enough to maintain the property, take care of the property as it is. But it doesn't make money. It's not a financially stable business. And I don't know if you know anything about the marine business, maybe you do. I can surely give you a tour of the place and explain to you the financials.
No, I get it.
Anybody on this, and
Again,
explain
and-
to you how, what it costs to build a 100-foot dock after it gets wrecked. Or boats slam into it, things like that.
Have you ever tried to sell it?
Well, we thought about it. We thought about selling. But we actually really love the place. And we love Warren. And, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, again, I mean, it's.
And I mean, as you know, it's a water related use, right?
Right.
You could put a seafood processing business there. You could do all kinds of crazy things there. Lobster bait, tackle, fishing, all kinds of stuff. Tugboats, stuff like that. I think it's.
Have you had anybody interested in doing that there?
No, Mr. Perry could probably testify as far as this fishing industry goes and trying to get scallop boats to come down the Warren River to pick up scallops or drop them off. It's difficult. It's almost impossible. We've had people from New Bedford come down and say, this is not a viable location for that.
Why
And
not?
obviously it isn't
Is it too
because,
far up the river?
yeah, and Todd Blount stopped doing that. Okay, and he doesn't even have a boat there anymore. And a lot of the fishermen don't eat, I mean, we have our coal hoggers, which, but the coal hoggers, I mean, they have the subsidized dock. Why do they want to come to my place? They pay what they pay there because the town gives them a lower rate. And then next door, we have a town dock that the project Land Trust for Public Land did. There's a restaurant there. There's a cafe there. There's a burger joint there. There's the subsidized town docks that are half the cost of ours, half the price of ours. How the hell are we supposed to compete with that? You go across the street to Striper Marine, it's $140 a linear foot in Barrington. Okay, and we're only 20 slips. So that's where we're at. If you're asking financial questions, and Mr. Tights is asking these financial questions, and I'll gladly answer them. I mean, I physically work there, and the neighbors know. They see it. They see the property. They see it more than I do. They're there all day, every day. They live there, and I'm there probably once or twice a day. I drive through there, and in the summer I try to spend more time there. And it's just a beautiful place. Best sunset in Rhode Island, I think. And I thought that, the opposition would understand and embrace that a little more so that they don't see like this big conglomerate come in, buy it up, throw all kinds of stuff there and ruin the view.
So essentially, you're really looking for some way to utilize that property to keep it afloat.
That's why I'm here today. Yeah, that's why I'm here today. I mean, we've owned this since 2002. The 2008 thing was a local business that asked if they could rent the space from us. I mean, we're business people too. So we're like, yeah, let's try it out. Opposition came out, it was more than this today. They couldn't even stand outside. And it didn't pass, and that's okay. And that's okay. We moved right along. We did what we could do. But now we're here and we have this opportunity for the town, for us, and for the community in that area. And it's very low in impact. I mean, people thinking pocket, pocket, pocket. It's very low impact. We don't even need the town to park. We don't even need to bother the neighbors. The working hours that Mr. Amaral mentioned. I mean, I mean,
And this is a really small thing that's going in, right? I mean, we're
Yes,
talking about
it's-
300 square foot.
it's not,
Here,
it's
1,300.
It's not the wharf tavern.
And that's just the distillery.
Yes.
It's not the
Still don't
wharf
have a
tavern.
Clear concept of what this actually entails in
So-
terms of.
Well, from
It's-
testimony before, my notes, so we had 1,300 square feet, right? So 18.5% of the building allocated to the purpose of the distillery and no outdoor activities associated with the distillery, correct?
Correct.
But there is a restaurant as well, correct?
No,
So, if I may, can I clarify that, because you mentioned my name. My understanding, we can double check Mr. Amaral, is that if you allow this type of use, we can make sure that we include potentially some pub food, that as part of his license that he would seek in the special use permit, he did want to serve some pub style food as a secondary activity.
Right, but
within-
again,
within
that's,
the-
that's
within
more
the
than
distillery.
1,300 square feet. You've got to, because you need that for just the distillery. So.
I'm not sure how
It's
it
not
lays out,
really
but we could ask.
Clear on
Yeah.
how big this thing is.
so if I may, Mr. Amaral mentioned that he needs 300 square feet to brew the stuff, right? To brew the rum. Okay, and then the 1,000 that's left over, Mr. Massey, the 1,000 that's left over will be tables and chairs for the public.
So it's 1,300 is the
Is
square
the
foot
space, correct?
that you're asking for the distillery and the
I'm
restaurant,
calling the whole package.
out of the total
With
7,000.
the main purpose
Okay.
being distillery, and if the other boards or building inspector allows it to serve food with it, pub food. Thank you.
No, I was just gonna say, a lot of these distilleries like this now have the distilling equipment in the sitting area. So it's like an open space. And like, that's why it was a small amount of space specifically designated.
Okay.
I don't want to go on too long because I have other people who want to speak, and I know there's a lot of members of the public here, so. But I'm just going to point out a couple of inconsistencies there. The fact, if there are 20 slips, I know that boaters, yachtsmen have a reputation as drinkers, but I don't see how 20 slips is going to be the majority of their business. It's obviously going to be the public, the land-bound public, which will be the majority of their business. And the same thing, a 300-foot distillery with a 1,000-foot restaurant, the restaurant isn't accessory to the distillery is accessory to the restaurant. So I think you should know that. I also, it's my information that they have not renewed the lease for Paul Dennis, the current boat repair person in the property. And it's also our belief they've done nothing to try to market this. We've heard about scallopers, but as far as for other marine uses, you heard it was, they're there. And the final comment about, I really want to make this point, the value is in the land. No, the value is not in the land for them because they paid below market in 2002 with this restriction. They knew right from the beginning they were buying it with this restriction, and that eliminated a chunk of the value from the property. And so it's not like some other commercial property that, oh, well, we're just going to wait till the land gets real valuable and sell it and so forth. This property is always going to have less value than other waterfront property because it has these restrictions, and they bought it cheaper because of these restrictions. And I think that's important. At this point, I do want to move on, and I'm going to call Ned Connors as my first witness. Edward Connors, to be specific. And if I could give you a copy of his resume. Can you come forward and identify yourself, please?
My name is Ned Connors, 39 Dyer Avenue, Riverside.
And so I've just introduced as an exhibit, a 5-page resume. So without going through all the 5 pages, could you tell us a little bit about your expertise as a historian and so forth?
I've been an historical preservation consultant since 1994, but over time developed a specialty in historic industrial and engineering sites, and have done many tax credit projects for the rehab of Rhode Island and Massachusetts factories that are now converted for other uses.
And your list, your resume has a list of those many projects?
Yes.
So I would ask that he be accepted as an expert in history.
I'd make a motion to accept Mr. Connors as an expert in history.
Second that.
Second, Tim, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
All right. And Mr. Connors, did you study this particular site?
Yes.
Okay, which we call 66B Church Street, but it also previously had another address?
259 Water Street rear is the way it was described in the National Register nomination in 1974.
And did you prepare a report of your historical analysis of the parcel?
Yes, I did.
And I'd like to submit this as an exhibit. And I'd like to introduce your report as an exhibit. I don't know if you want to mark, you don't seem to be marking them as numbers, but so if we could just have that as an exhibit as well.
Do we need to make a motion to have this accepted as an exhibit? I believe we do.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'd make that motion to accept this report as an exhibit. Second, Tyler Dixon, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
So again, this is it's a fairly extensive report, but there's a lot of questions. I mean, a lot of pictures in the report. You want to tell the board briefly what you found out in the history of the report of the property there?
Yeah, the study that I did was very parcel specific. Going back to 1870, I traced every image, every map, every newspaper article, anything we could find about activity at that 259 Water Street rear parcel, later renumbered 66 Church Street. And what is really significant in the study is that around 1890, Ezra Martin, he and his partner had been running a huge lumber building supplies waterfront operation just below Tourister at the foot of Sisson Street. And Mr. Martin, who was the successor to the earlier partnership, acquired the parcel in question tonight and built the shed that we've been talking about between 1903 and 1908. So we'll just say circa 1905. And the building has been in constant maritime water-related commerce use since that time.
Could you tell us about some of the uses over the last century?
Yes, Ezra Martin, he died in 1900. The successors to the company, Daniel Luther and Joseph Martin, are the ones who actually built this shed that we're talking about. And it was for lumber storage. So boats would come in with lumber, they would be stored there, and then they would be distributed out of there. He still had a huge operation upriver near Tourister. And they did that until right after Hurricane Carol. As best I can tell, Hurricane Carol was the sort of parting blow to that lumber business. And the 38 hurricane had just preceded that by 15 years. And so in 1959, William Booth bought the property and had a 300-foot barge parked out there. There's a specific barge called a lighter. And he'd been running an operation out of Bristol. He bought the parcel and the shed and was running and was, by 1965, was operating the largest lighter in all of Narragansett Bay out of that wharf and that parcel. And after that, there were several more modest, but all maritime related businesses, marine construction, a marine cushion company, and they were running those operations right up until the whole matter with the Trust for Public Land came about circa 2000.
And in your investigation of the parcel, did you find any evidence that it was used as distillery?
No.
Any evidence was used as a brewery?
No.
Any evidence that it was used as a restaurant?
Yes. There was a tiny little oyster house for about 2 years, perched right at the corner of the water, and then it disappears. So somewhere around 1920, something like that. There was a small wooden frame building labeled Oyster House. We don't know if it was successful or not.
Right. Well, actually, we do have someone else who's going to tell us more specifically about what the use of it was.
I certainly
just
did
wanna-
find it.
I just wanted to know that you found that on the map.
Yeah.
But nothing for a distillery or a
No.
brewery. All right. I have no further questions.
Okay.
This witness, I don't know if the board has. Oh, I'm sorry, I do actually. Excuse me. Because we've now had him give you the history. And now is when I'm going, since he's been accepted as an expert, I'm going to ask that he give you his opinion about the proposals, which is here before you today. If I could submit this letter to you from Mr. Connors and ask that it be accepted as an exhibit.
Make the motion to accept the letter from Mr. Connors, which I believe you're going to summarize.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's only it's a quick read. I'll just, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Second, Rick, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
All right, off we go. Thank you. I appreciate having this opportunity. Warren Waterfront Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places by the Park Service in 1974. At that time, the district was recognized for its remarkable collection of some 400 commercial, civic, residential, ecclesiastical, and maritime buildings. The author of the nomination was architectural historian Anselm Lynch of the State Historic Preservation Commission. Speaking of the town's waterfront maritime buildings generally, she noted, and I'm quoting here, perhaps more than any other single type, maritime-related commercial buildings contribute significantly to Warren's waterfront sense of time and place. Its continuing waterfront activity has kept many of these buildings in original or related appropriate uses, and others remain in conditions largely unaltered for their time of maritime use. This is 1974. There's been a fair amount of attrition since then. Beyond the individual significance of each building as functional maritime architecture, the whole ensemble of the waterfront achieves almost exceptional importance because of its extraordinary ability to convey the sense of an evolved working waterfront with layer upon layer of clearly understandable historic resources unparalleled in the state. The old Warren Marina building under consideration for a change of use is a contributing building in the Waterfront Historic District. Speaking of the architectural qualities of this specific building, the author noted, these buildings typify, or this building typifies the utilitarian wood frame buildings so typical of a working maritime-oriented waterfront and are important as character-defining elements in a historic district. The frame maritime building at 66 Church Street was built by E.M. Martin circa 1905 for receiving and storing lumber supplies by boat. The building has remained in maritime commercial use to the present day. The change of use to a restaurant and brewery or distillery, as we understand it now, requested by the current owners will significantly alter and compromise the character of the Warren Waterfront District as a working waterfront. It is my opinion that the change of use under consideration tonight stands in stark contrast to both the letter and the spirit of the 2002 easement requiring predominantly maritime and water-related uses of the property. The loss of character of this National Park Service recognized waterfront district has occurred and will occur one parcel, one building, one change of use at a time. Thank you.
Now I'm through unless you have any
Okay,
questions.
clearly, you know, as we discussed, or as we noted earlier, you know, the slave trade was part of the maritime use of Warren waterfront, the whaling, the sealing. Lumber is clearly not a current or present use. Yes, you know, that this would be used. So the changes of use relative to maritime, the water-related, water-dependent use are to some degree dependent on the time, the era. Right now, this is being used as a place for boats, pleasure boats and some commercial boats. Its use is right now consistent with that historic use. And it's helpful to know, you know, that this has been a revolving use depending on time, but it is currently being used for a maritime water dependent because you have to have docks and you have to have these boats come in. It also is being used as a boat repair area. The fact that that boat repair business is not going to be there is concerning. My question is, when you change use in a parcel, you don't just change the use for the 1,300 square feet, you're changing the use for that parcel. Is that correct?
This,
Then,
I'll let your solicitor answer and then I'll.
Is it a mixed, is it a multi-use building? Is that how it's
Yeah.
being?
Can I speak? Can I speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a multi-use building and the boat builder is still there. You telling me he's leaving?
I don't know.
Oh,
I
he's
mean,
still there.
I-
He never signed a lease,
somebody-
ever. He's been there for, 15 years.
But
That
I
was,
guess the question though is, when you, okay, yeah, no, somebody had mentioned the
I
fact
just didn't know if
that
you're saying he's
that,
leaving.
yeah,
Then-
somebody had said it.
If
Okay.
he's
Well,
leaving,
well, that's
news
why
to
I'm
me.
asking.
Cause he said he was leaving, or he's leaving.
Okay, yeah, no, that's,
That's news
I'm
to
sorry,
me.
you are the boat builder? Yeah, okay.
The question if it means they could then, if you approve it 100%, could become that use without any restrictions. And I guess it's probably dependent on, you know, whether or not the town council places some sort of limitations on it. Like, does it need to be an accessory use, for example, or even more specific restrictions on the scale of that, you know? So I don't know that it necessarily means by approving it, the town council then has zero control as to the scale of the operation.
The
Like,
history
there
in
could be
this,
some
in this
limitations.
town though has been, once you grant a use, there's a kind of, you know, there's an evolution that occurs quite often
Correct, because
as a result.
we're strictly talking about just use, not talking about size of use, we're talking about use.
Right,
And certainly, there's some concern that although it may be proposed today as
100 square
exactly,
feet.
so that's certainly a concern in the future to somebody to come back and say, hold on, you approved a restaurant for X amount of feet, and now we want to amend.
Expand that because.
Correct, that's certainly a concern.
Okay,
Well, with that being said, so if this is very niche with rum, if, let's say, they decide to vacate after a year or two, and someone just come in and do the same use they were doing and apply for a special use permit and bypass this process.
They wouldn't even have to apply for a special
Let's
use
just
permit.
let the.
no, because it would have been,
Repeat, I'm sorry.
So,
They would have to go through the process again, if this particular use is approved, and then the business closes, a new owner opens, that use has already been authorized, wouldn't go through this process again.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Gotcha.
But,
Is it appropriate to think about this much the way we think about conservation easements? If we put a agricultural preservation easement on a property in perpetuity, the farmer might say, can I put a wedding barn on the property? Because that's related to my farm use. And DEM has typically said, based on whatever the specific language is, no, actually a wedding barn is not an agricultural use. Am I thinking about this the same way? Because this is also, agricultural preservation, this is historic preservation, there's specific uses that are stated in here. We're thinking about what the definition of water related is, but it's specific to that. And in this case, the town has the right to remove the easement or modify it, as opposed to DEM or Agricultural Preservation Commission or wherever. Am I thinking about it the same way and in intent and purpose and structure?
I think it's certainly similar in nature, the two comparisons.
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, I was just, would you be able to limit the easement or the special use to a specific portion of the building? Kind of well, I mean, is that something that the town could put that condition on it? I mean, obviously.
So procedurally, here, town council, zoning board, both the town council and the zoning board can put a restriction in terms of size, can only be 1,300 square feet. However, nothing prevents them from coming back later on once the use is allowed, or even a variance to supersede.
And you've established to some degree a precedent.
Well,
The fact is.
I have another question. So a marina is a water-related industry, correct? And it is more than common that marinas have restaurants and bars in them. I mean, all the time. So I'm just saying, where is the threshold? I mean, would we be like putting a restriction that would say that you would have to have a marina that would have restrictions that bind it more than other marinas?
This one, in fact, does, compared to other marinas,
I mean, because marina is a waterfront, I mean, a
Right, no, but
water-related thing. I'm just
the terms of
making sure I better
the,
understand.
did not, it is a marina. It's not a restaurant marina. And most of the marinas that do have restaurants are not in areas that are saturated with restaurants already. So it's not necessarily an economic hardship to say a marina can't have a restaurant. Because you can function as a marina without a restaurant, despite the fact that, a lot of marinas do have restaurants. And many of those are in areas where it's just the marina. I mean, I can think of 6 or 7 right off the top of my head that have restaurants, but because they're isolated.
I mean, from what they propose, right, it doesn't really significantly alter, it doesn't significantly alter, destroy, or compromise of what's going on there right now from what they propose. So like where we keep going with this question is, does this now, that whole property become eligible to at some point have precedent set to where someone can come in and request a restaurant?
If you approve, it changes the use and it allows now a restaurant or slash bar tavern, however, it's officially gets designated the use on that property, yes.
But we can't consider like what that designation is, because that's up to zoning and council, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And Mr. Chair, I think members of the public are also here want to speak, so maybe we should allow them to speak.
Okay, yeah. Can you
Okay.
come back and
Pardon me?
Can you come back and we'll let a few people?
Well, I kind of would
I
like
mean,
to
'cause it
finish.
has gone on for.
I understand, but we've also gone through a lot of digressions, which I think are very important. I think your questions are good and are
But
important.
I also want to let the public speak, so.
I understand.
Tights, can you just make it a little bit more
Sure, I will.
delicious, please?
I will definitely try to do that. I do want to I want to comment on the question that you asked. Because I think this is a little different. We're all of us, me and you, we're used to dealing with someone who's here who's asking for some sort of zoning relief. They are looking for either variance or a zoning amendment, and that's how you're kind of thinking change of use. So there's two aspects of it. There's a legal aspect and the practical aspect. And the legal aspect of this is a private easement. This is not a governmental, this is a private easement between the town of Warren and these owners. And the town has the ability to say no. And unlike any kind of zoning thing, there's no appeal. This is just a discretionary fact on the town. If the town says, nope, we're not going to amend it, there's nothing they can do. They can't appeal it. It's all private. And to the extent of your question, I would hope you would not approve it, but if you did, the council could specifically limit it to just 1,300 square feet. Because it's private, they probably could also limit it to one particular tenant as well. Not something you could do with zoning. Zoning runs with the land, but this is a private property easement and the town has a property interest in this. So it could be done. The practical point, as the chair pointed out, and I think others of you are concerned, as a practical matter, once it's there, the tendency is going to expand. The first thing will probably be outdoors, perhaps COVID will come back or whatever. It's beautiful. We just want to have a little idea. We want to have a little area outdoors. It'll expand. And then there'll be more expansion in the building. And over time, once it's there, it does it. The other thing too, is you have someone who's repairing boats and whatnot. And people who are sitting there trying to enjoy their beer and their sandwich don't want to necessarily hear the noise from the bandsaws or whatnot, or smell the fiberglass epoxy while they're having their beer and their sandwich, their pub fare. And that's what happens. There's complaints, and over time, these uses drive out these maritime uses. So I think that's something to consider. And I also dispute the point that most marinas have restaurants. In fact, I think most of them don't. Some do, but I mean, just look at the three immediately closest to this one across the river, Stripers, as he mentioned, and the two others on the other side in the Barrington River. None of them have a restaurant. There's a restaurant there on the street. There's the yacht club, but the marinas don't have restaurants. The other marinas don't. It's not an integral part of a marina use. As you said, it's more the ones that are out in the middle of like Block Island or something. If there's when they're not near other uses, they may have part of an accessory as a restaurant. So let me just, if I could call Davis and Bolster and get him up here and finish the other half of the history stuff. I think that would be good. And then maybe I'll hold off with the other witnesses and let you get the public a chance, if you would.
Okay.
So if I could introduce his civic around. This is his credentials. I'd like to have that made an exhibit. If you can give your name and address to the record. And
Davis and Bolster, 53 State Street.
And if you could just briefly tell us about your experience. You don't have to go through the whole two-page stuff.
My first efforts on this waterfront were 1986, where I was mentored by our old grant administrator, Fidel Incalingo, and wrote the grants to build the fisherman's dock behind the sewage treatment plant. And so I helped create the plans and write the grants for that. And that was my first foray into sort of protecting the working waterfront. In '92, 6 years later, I helped draft the comprehensive plan. I chaired the Natural and Cultural Resources section, which dealt with the working waterfront, and most of the language that was in that plan about the working waterfront came from myself. In 2000, with the condominium proposals for both the Harbor Marine property and the Eastern Yachts property, we had a local organization, the Alliance to Develop Warren Wisely, get involved and start to question the proposals, so that in 2001, the community organized, the town council commissioned a study, which I believe you have from Ron Wood at Urban Design Group in Bristol. And then they appointed the waterfront committee to study it all, to look into it. In 2002, the town council approved the waterfront plan, took care of the pollution remediation, and so forth. And by 2003, most of the parcels had been sold with easements and so forth. So I chaired the waterfront committee doing that whole process for about 3 years and became a certified grant writer. Was sent by the planning board to the city of New York for a week for a waterfront conference just after 9/11. And have a whole list here of people that helped provide input on the plan, which was an extensive list of experts. So, go ahead.
Okay. And what was Luther Blount's involvement in this?
So Luther was inspired, obviously, he grew up on this waterfront and he created a maritime business of his own and has employed hundreds or thousands of good paying jobs over 80 years or what have you. Which there's people here who can speak to better than that. And so he was concerned that the walking waterfront was going to disappear under a pavement of residential development, which, as we've seen in Newport, is very difficult to stop. So when he saw this group, the Alliance to Develop Warren Wisely, get involved, he was very inspired. And he came to us and pretty much told us first that he was going to donate $1 million to the town to actually back us up on the plan and help fund these easements. And then he went ahead and did that at the town council meeting thereafter.
Okay, and he did in fact end up donating $1 million.
Yes, and again, which helped subsidize these properties so that they were purchased below market because the uses are, from a real estate perspective, less valuable with these restrictions.
The two gentlemen who bought the property, did they come to you after they bought it?
You mean?
Did they approach you about doing any work for them after they bought the property?
Yes, they hired me to create a plan for their property.
Okay. And could you tell us just a little bit about that plan? What essentially, was it incorporating maritime uses or was it incorporating breweries and distilleries?
No, it was all maritime uses. We proposed renovating the buildings that were there, expanding their uses to provide more opportunities for maritime businesses and economic development.
Okay. And do you have an opinion as to whether the proposed use of brewery, distillery, restaurant would alter or impair the character of the Waterfront Historic District as a working waterfront?
Well, the short answer is that it would affect it. Obviously, if it was a very small thing, like a tiny clam shack at the end of the dock, it might not, but I think ultimately, as everybody has pointed out, that this would eventually consume the whole property and potentially the property next door. So I think it's a real slippery slope.
And just the question, as far as your research, the Oyster House that was there briefly around the turn of the 20th century, from the 19th to 20th century, was that a restaurant kind of oyster house?
I have never heard of it before tonight, so I have no idea.
Okay.
I have just a couple of handouts that can be reviewed. The first is a list of proposed businesses for both these parcels that we created during the waterfront process 25 years ago. And the second one is, and these are all 25-year-old documents. There's nothing new here. The other one is some illustrations that were done that are part of the waterfront plan to present the vision, to implement the vision, both for the Harbor Marine and the Eastern Yachts parcels. So I'd like to see those distributed as well.
Okay, so we're introducing first proposed businesses and uses for Eastern Yachts and Harbor Marine sites. And we'd ask that that be accepted as an exhibit. And then the next one is a series of drawings and illustrations from the plan, and also including membership of the Warren Waterfront Committee, and gratitude from Senator Reed and the other state officials who were involved. So if I could introduce this as an exhibit.
Wait, are these your recommendations for businesses that should?
Yes. Back in 2002. And again, all these are 25 years old from the plan that was approved by the council.
So I have nothing further from this witness. And at
Quick
your.
question for Davison. Davison, when you produced that plan for the current owners, was there any action taken to forward or to pursue those?
No.
Anything else? This was, as I can see from this was the entire waterfront that you were looking at, you know, in terms of this illustration. This is,
No, that pretty much just is from the Harbor Marine property in your left to the Eastern Yachts property on the right.
right, but this
includes the
tall
town
ship
wharf.
is the town wharf.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
because
what
that
I'm
was
saying.
part of the Harbor Marine property originally.
Was that sold? Was the town wharf sold as part of the,
Yes.
with restriction?
That lot actually has a public easement, a public access easement on it from the $500,000 DOT grant that we got for a potential of a future ferry landing.
Right, but that land, was that sold as part of the trust
Yes.
for public
Yes.
lands?
Yes.
With, it had to be water-based.
Well, the
water
town owns
related.
that lot now.
Okay,
That was the deal, and the two side lots where Trafford's and Champa are now were carved out separately. It used to be just one big lot. And the two side lots were created and sold off privately, in the middle lot, which is.
sold off privately in contravention to the existing easement?
No, so those two lots only had commercial use restrictions, not maritime use
Okay.
restrictions.
All right,
The only lots that had the maritime use restrictions were the 66 Church Street and the 90 Baker Street.
okay.
But the other exhibit that was introduced, the one that says proposed businesses and uses for Eastern Yacht Sales and Harbor Marine sites, that was specifically for the owners of this parcel, is that correct?
This was before there were any owners of any of these lots. This was put out there as a guide to the types of businesses that the town wanted to see.
So this was available before they bought the property.
Yes.
Okay.
I know, I don't mean to stop if you
No,
have
no,
questions.
no. that's-
I understand that you'd like to give the public a chance to talk and whatnot. So, if I may just reserve, I do have, one more witness to speak, Mr. Nathan
Yeah,
Kelly. So
no.
if I could just reserve that,
Sure.
and I'll come back with him later.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone out there like to come forward, Grant? If you do want to speak after I said that, raise your hand, you know, so I know. what's going on.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Brant Heckert, 26 State Street. And I'm here with my wife Eileen, speaking for both of us. In 2003, we acquired 2 of the 6 parcels that had been purchased by the Trust for Public Land. One of our parcels at 64 Church Street directly abuts the applicants at 66 Church Street. So we're butters right there, and we also own property up at 259 Water Street, which was mentioned earlier by Ned Connors. They used to call that whole property 259 rear. Anyway, not to get in the weeds on that. As you've already heard, the trust purchased the property in 2002 to ensure that the parcels would be sold to responsible owners committed to preserving the historic value of the buildings and the waterfront. That was their whole goal, is get them off the market, make sure they don't go in the wrong hands, get them into the hands of people who are going to preserve these properties. And you've already also heard that they added an important protection And that's a clearly written historic preservation easement into, incorporated into each deed. So they said, yeah, we're gonna take them off the market, find good, in fact, we had to write a little story about what we're gonna do with those properties before they would even consider our bid. But they put the easements down. And this was an essential step in protecting a piece of one of New England's last remaining waterfronts. It's a vital asset for the town, and that's repeatedly outlined in the 2001 Waterfront Development Plan. If you have not read that or seen that, you really need to see that, because again, when there were condo propositions came in around 2001, there was a lot of opposition, and the town council recognized that. The town council commissioned that waterfront study, $30,000. That was a lot of money in those days. It's a lot of money now, but the town council felt like it was worth studying and getting recommendations on what to do. And the waterfront study basically said, you've got an asset, Warren, protect it. Don't let it slide. Don't let it go. Okay, so rather than looking at those easements as restrictions, some people look at them as restrictions. We didn't look at them that way. My wife and I, we saw them as necessary safeguards, ensuring that the time, money, and effort that we invested in our own properties would be protected from possible inappropriate development surrounding us. And so we felt pretty confident. We said, easements are there, they're strong, we're all on the same page, we want to preserve these buildings. If you've seen any of the buildings down there, I own two of them, we own two of them. We put a hell of a lot of money into those buildings and preserving them, and we're very proud of it. And so, in short, we felt the easements would preserve both our direct investment and the integrity of the waterfront. So ultimately, the owners of the two adjacent parcels located at the ends of Church and Baker Street have twice sought approval for development proposals that were incompatible and harmful to the character of the waterfront. They are now trying that for a third time, three times, maybe three times the charm, I don't know. Three times a bite at the apple, I don't know. But our concerns, my wife and I, go beyond the direct impact on our own properties. We really fear that the development will negatively impact the entire area, and not even mentioning the traffic and parking congestion, because that's another story, and that's really not to decide tonight. You're talking about change of use. That's really what you got to think about. But you can imagine what might happen down the road. This is a typical foot in the door play. You get your foot in the door, now you've got it open, now you can start opening that door. And down the road, you know, a 1,300 square foot, I don't know, we call it a restaurant, bar, whatever it is. Now we can expand that. And no, they're not going to use the outside, which is ludicrous. If you're running a business in the summer and you're not going to put tables outside, I mean, I don't get that. That doesn't sound like a very good business proposal. But I think you should understand what is being presented here, which is like, yeah, it's just going to be a little this, a little that. Well, you don't know that, but you're opening the door to that. So I want you to be understanding of that. So the deed restriction is unambiguous. Unambiguous, it's written. The proposed use must not significantly alter or compromise the character of the waterfront historic district as a working waterfront. This current proposal obviously violates that restriction. I don't see how you can look at it any other way, my opinion. But planning, folks, is not just about planning for the future. It's about protecting the character of the town now and ensuring that we don't squander our most irreplaceable assets, the waterfront. People would kill for this. They don't have that in other communities. In Newport, they've ruined it. They put up condominiums. So it's a slippery slope that so anyway, I go on. We, my wife and I, respectfully ask that you vote to protect both the current and the future residents and deny this request for a change of use. I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, concerns?
Hello, Jan Monis, 67 Water Street, and I'm the owner of the boat tours, and thank you for the compliment. I don't have a lease. I emailed Angelo in January, and he responded saying that he was working with someone to rent Church Street, but they were thinking of cleaning space out of the 90 Baker Street, and he'd know in a month. And he'd never responded. He never responded to my request to see the space. So they're giving you some misinformation. I have no space there. And one other thing you might want to consider, they're trying to put a brewery next to a boat builder, and there are a lot of toxic chemicals in the boat building space. And they're saying there's no outdoor space, but there's already a deck built. So they can say, no, they're not planning on outdoor space, but there's already a deck there. So if they're just replacing something existing, that's another little reference to Mr. Eckhart saying they're muscling their way in. No offense at all. But when I first leased the space from Angelo, I said, I'm looking for year-round full-time space for a maritime exhibit and to house my Warren River Company office, which is now being housed in the handkerchief factory with my other business. And it would require a lot of investment for them to make that space into something that could get a fair market value. And I guess they weren't willing to do that for me. But I own Warren River Company. I am the boat tours, and I do not have any space. I have no lease, and I have no verbal agreement for space at 90 Baker Street or Church Street, as they had said.
Did your lease expire and just was
I
not?
had a seasonal lease, so my
Okay.
lease was Memorial Day to Columbus Day. I emailed in January because I have to get all my ducks in a row because I'm a one-woman show. And on January 27th, he said he's working with someone to rent Church Street. And they were thinking of cleaning out space on 90 Baker Street, and he would know in a month. And the only time that I heard from Angelo was after he read my letter to the planning board begging you to consider the history of our town. And it was more of a spiteful email than it was a productive business email.
So your business, you take people out in boats and tour the Warren River?
I have restored a 1966 Dyer Glamour Girl that was built on Miller Street and restored on Miller Street. I'm restoring a 20-footer, and I'm restoring the Dyer 29 that Marjorie Merriweather Post had built here in Warren in 1963 by Dyer. So I am spending a fortune at Dyer. And I do my historical tours start on a historical boat built in Warren.
And taking people out for tours?
Yeah, on the
this?
Warren and Barrington
Okay.
Rivers. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions or?
Well, Mr. Chairman and members of the board and public, I'm Paul Atman. I'm here to represent my wife and myself, Leanne Herod. We are direct butters to this property. We live at 65 Church Street, next door to the Maxwell House, in the little blue house at the end of Church Street. And yes, it's the best sunset in Rhode Island. And a lot of people come down day in, day night to enjoy it. They're waiting for their tables at the restaurants. They come down Church Street, but there's an easement down there, and if it's marked, they'll be able to find it, but it hasn't been marked, and it's something that those property owners agreed to do when they purchased the property. There's a 6-foot easement that goes along the waterfront for everyone to enjoy. And it's not marked. Cars are parked there all the time because in the summer, the marina is busy. There's boaters there. There's guests there. They're having a cookout on the deck, and it's wonderful seeing. It's great. So 25 years ago, in late 2000, my wife and I began to search to buy our first house in Warren. And we wanted downtown. And in 2002, when the 6 Eastern Yacht properties were offered for sale by the Trust for Public Land, we were excited to have this unique opportunity to bid on one of the properties. We're absolutely thrilled that our bid, along with grants and others, because we had to explain what we're gonna do with the property, and we were going to sign the terms that came with it. And we accepted that. Historic preservation and use easements were written into the deeds of each of the 6 properties, providing every property owner, residents of the surrounding neighborhood, the waterfront district, and and Warren, which the town council was behind, guidelines for predictable development for the future. All improvements of the properties would need to be abide by the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation administered by the Park Service, National Park Service. In addition, restrictions regulating the allowed types of use on the waterfront parcels, the parcel in question today, were added to ensure that those properties will continue to serve water-related and water-dependent uses. The ability to rely on these legal documents and protections for reasonable expectations was one of the most important reasons we chose to sign the dotted line. With knowledge and understanding of a common scheme, intent, and outlined in place, we are committed to be stewards of the property, along with the other 5 property owners. If you walk down Church Street, you'll see the improvements that we continue to invest in 23 years later. Allowing this request to change the terms and contract of one of the property owners will violate the conditions and expectations that we bought our property with. And it will adversely affect the investments we have made in our home and in our property. Furthermore, it will erode protections that have been established and accepted and are in fact to preserve the special and unique character of this specific parcel and collection of properties that make up one of the last intact working waterfront neighborhood blocks. This is from Baker to Church. It's a small block, but very important one of Warren. The town today, by the leadership of the planning board and the town council in a month or two, has the obligation to uphold the town of Warren's vision that was put into place with these mechanisms. As direct and impacted abutters, we urge you to recommend to the town council not to grant this request for change of allowed uses to the old Warren Marina. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to make a statement or?
They're not related to the easement, but they're related to the project.
You need to identify yourself.
Yeah, Krista Rotolo, 43 Church Street. So the owner said that there's a difficulty turning down Church from water, and the buildings on that corner are very close to the edge. They don't sit back. So how would like delivery trucks and construction vehicles get down there? Because in front of my house, trucks get stuck all the time. And we're constantly having to call the police to come direct.
I was talking about boat trailers, like bringing a boat trailer.
But how would like a big food delivery truck? How would a food delivery truck make those turns, make that turn?
Given
So I happen to be in the trucking business too, so a straight job truck, single axle rear, dual axle rear is different than a trailer with a rig pulling a trailer. It's a little bit bigger, the width of the boats, the height of the boats.
How about a molasses tanker?
Molasses tanker, well, that's different too. Molasses tanker, well, are smaller, different, maybe bigger, depends on the situation.
I mean, I think one of the concerns here, obviously, and particularly among the abutters, is an understanding of how this would be used. And the current uses right now are in sync with the existing owners' properties. I mean, I've seen the properties down there that are really incredibly well managed, and in this, to me, is a significant change. Having seen the impact of Chomp, of Bywater, of Trafford's, of the Lobster and Clam Shack, I mean, there's a lot of restaurants down there that lead to a tremendous amount of traffic. And this is, in many ways, as you're saying, a residential area. And
It's also an area where trucks routinely end up on sidewalks. I walk my dogs on Water Street. We're constantly running from when trucks are turning out of Blount, out of the Clam Shack parking lot.
I mean, there's what I'm hearing is you're asking for preservation of a way of life, that you were under the impression, particularly the buyers of the property from the Trust for Public Land, bought with the understanding that their restrictions would be honored, as would the restrictions of the people who bought the land as well. So, I mean, there is, to me, that's really at the crux of this. That and the fact that the comprehensive plan, which we've spent almost a decade working on through changes in the planning board, has reinforced that this is an important part of the character of the sense of place of Warren. A distillery can be built anywhere. It's not dependent on
Right.
water. And in fact, as I'm sorry, I've forgotten the woman's name, but that the concerns or the how a restaurant can coexist with a boat building operation, particularly one that's going to be in the same building, is my understanding. You're using that building.
Doesn't build boats. The current tenant,
Well,
not
they're-
boat builder, he repairs boats.
He repairs
So
boats.
he
but-
has deliveries too.
Yeah, I know, but he's gonna be doing that in the same building that you would have the
Yeah,
distillery.
So he'll take like a 32-foot Catalina, sand it down, buff it off, do some work to it.
Use
Send it on its
epoxy,
way.
you know, I mean,
You know,
it's,
I think that's what he's been doing. So, I
Right.
mean, I'm not a boat repairer guy, but.
okay, but anyway, I mean, again, I think the point is, I can't get into what size trucks are gonna go
Right.
down there.
So my
Clearly,
next question was about the size of the business, because they keep talking about it being very small, but then it's 1,300 square feet. And one of them said 2 to 3 employees at a time. For a 1,300 square foot restaurant that serves food, so the person is cooking, is that person doing everything? Bussing tables, cleaning, cooking, serving?
I don't know, again, you know, but
But I
we-
guess if you do approve it, you need to start thinking about, I think that some of the information that they presented is a little,
our
misleading.
concern here is not the specific details, it's the change of use. And that, you know, this is our recommendation to the town council gets a shot at it. What we have to look at is the agreement that was made with the Trust for Public Lands, which was done with the understanding of the town council at the time and paid for, was supported both in word and in money by the town council. On top of that, we went through this comprehensive plan, and no one during that process of over 10 years said to us, we need to change this designation. I mean, these were open meetings that we invited folks to come to and took very seriously in terms of the comments that were made at those. At no time during that process did we ever hear about the need to change the agreements that were made by the Trust for Public Lands. And so as a consequence, we built into the comprehensive plan this reinforcement of the maintenance of the Warren waterfront district, and particularly water-related and water-dependent uses. So it's difficult for me, because I've been here through the whole process. Some of the members have just come on board. Some of them were, you know, a few of them were here through the process. Some folks who are out there were here through the process. But that process was an open and public process that reinforced the importance of the maintenance of understanding how this waterfront would look. I understand the concept of a small unit within this building, but it's not been, to my sense, well defined. And it also concerns me that this would be a commercial establishment of the sort that would require people to come in there to service it. And as someone pointed out, 20 slips is not going to make you a business. You can't count on,
Mr. Chairman, can we maybe hear some other?
Yeah,
from the audience?
okay.
Yeah, I get, and then my final comment, but Jan said it too. I thought it was a little very misleading that she's been out of her lease there for months and they mentioned it numerous times. It seemed like it was really trying to give you the impression that she was still operating
Okay.
there.
Thank you.
Evening, I'm Jan Rijsma, 54 Water Street. I hesitate to add anything to what you just said, because I think you hit the nail on the head in many ways. I need to ask first whether my letter was or was not forwarded to the board.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought, so I brought extras. I don't really want to read it because it could take a little while. But I wonder if I can pass them out or should give it.
Yeah, you can enter it as evidence.
Thank you. So the main points that I wanted to touch on, what you already touched on as well, is this case is special because it has an enforceable easement, an enforceable private easement. And there's several jurisdictions involved in that enforcement and in making sure that it's being adhered to. That includes the town because the town agreed to accept the easement at the time as part of a larger effort to preserve this special part of Warren. It's weird how the law works, but if you read it, the easement, it says that the easement remains enforceable in perpetuity against the trust for public land. I just want you to think about what that means, that the trust for public land continues to have an interest in making sure that its provisions are being adhered to as well. I'm not sure to what, someone mentioned a little bit ago that the town can change the easement. I'm not sure to what extent that's true. And again, the town can change its laws and ordinances and regulations. I'm not sure that it can unilaterally change the provisions of this easement. But I'm not a practicing lawyer. I also want to notice that there's a special role for the planning board in this case under section 26 of the zoning ordinance, which is the Warren Waterfront Historic District. And under that, there is an application required that goes to the planning board. And that the planning board, in the first instance, has the key role of reviewing the project under the specific provisions of that section. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I think it's worth reading that section because it echoes a lot of the other provisions that you talked about, whether it's in the historic preservation easements, the waterfront plan, comprehensive plan, and also in section 26. About permitting, my concern is with piecemeal permitting. I have some experience with that in my past employment. And what often happens is that a piece is proposed. This is all we need right now. And not too long after that, something more substantial is happening. I personally believe that's what happened at Town Wharf. And I think there are lessons to be learned from Town Wharf. What is needed is to have absolute certainty what is likely to happen or quite possibly to happen in the future, near future, not like 50 years from now, but say 10 years from now. And not looking into that and not making sure that we have, in fact, an honest answer to the question, what are the plans? What's the scope of the plan, short term, longer term, to the extent there is a plan. But what I hear tonight already is, let's present it like this. It's very small. But there's more to it. The other part of segmenting is that you don't look at one parcel when in fact there are two parcels. And everything that I've heard tonight is that the two parcels are part of one and the same operation and will be. So that needs to be considered in its entirety. I think the request for change of use is just for one parcel, if I'm not mistaken, not for parcel 71, even though it's part of the overall proposed operation. So what I would hope is that you take the time to go through all these various aspects for it carefully and really one by one consider what applies to this project and whether you have the answers to the questions that should be asked about this project before you go ahead and make a recommendation to the town council, because you have a special responsibility, I believe, in this particular case. And finally, about the context, which I already touched upon. We live with the context of, say, Town Wharf. We live with a water street where we do have congestion, where we do have an awful lot of noise, where we do have a serious parking problem. And we keep adding pressure to those things. Someone mentioned the food trucks. It's unbelievable. And I know it's part of having restaurants, but there are days that you just kind of go like, this is crazy. It's not safe. Other people can't drive through sometimes. It definitely changes the character of the waterfront. And so how much more can we actually take? And then what's fair? Because I understand that these folks own a building. I don't blame them for looking for ways to continue with some proper use that they can also benefit from themselves. But then I also come back to their neighbors who bought properties with reliance on this historic preservation easement. So the enforceability of that is not something to be taken lightly. It's not, I think, whether the planning board members think that something should be approved because it's only 1,300 feet. It needs to be considered in light of what was determined in the past as part of a huge preservation effort, a successful preservation effort, where a lot of people spent a lot of time and resources on. And what was promised at that time and memorialized as promises in this easement. Let's try to stick with it. Let's try to find a way to have future uses at the site that fit within that picture. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Board, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Spencer Morris, 18 Cole Street, Warren, Rhode Island. My wife and I also own a property on the corner of Baker and Child Street, not abutting the properties in question, but close enough to be called neighbors. And I prepared for this a little bit by going through an old file that I had and noticed that I'd signed an oath in November 13th, 2001 to serve on the Waterfront Committee to take a look at what was being threatened by residential developments on our waterfront. And that was the beginning of the history that's been outlined here tonight. I will say that Old Warren Marine has been a very good neighbor. And I think largely because they've complied with the restrictions that are put on the property when they purchased it. And I'm not sure in the almost 25 years, what has changed about waterfronts, about the economic vitality of waterfronts that would make it necessary to put a distillery and a brewery, tap room, or restaurant. I think those are issues that haven't been clearly defined tonight. But I do understand that if we eliminate certain types of working properties along waterfronts, we won't find And again, I am sympathetic to the owners for their the economic hardship they claim tonight. But I also realize that without those properties on the waterfront restricted for maritime type uses, we will not get the type of innovation and entrepreneurial transformation that I think is necessary to keep the waterfront in Warren and other waterfronts innovative and exciting places to be. I don't think a brewery or a distillery is particularly innovative as part of a waterfront scene. So I will concur that the scenic backdrop of a waterfront is very desirable for restaurants these days, tap rooms, et cetera. But if we're looking to develop innovation on our waterfront, we have to preserve those opportunities. And I would respectfully ask this board to consider that in denying this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Henry Blade, 80 Baker Street, abutters to the property. I just want to say, along with my other colleagues here, neighbors, that I agree with everything they're saying. That this is basically a covenant that we all signed into, and that we are all obligated to make it work. And if we do, it will work. It's just terrible for me to hear that they want to bring this up again. Also, one of the things that Scott had mentioned was the boats and blocking the view. I think I speak for my neighbors, but certainly for myself. When the boats are there, we're never feeling like the view is blocked. That is the view. We want to see a working waterfront. So I hope you will deny this request.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, move that we close the open meeting section.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, Mr. Title's
Yeah.
I have one more witness.
Yep.
Thank you. I will call Nathan Kelly. Submit, this is a copy of Kelly's resume.
Good evening.
That it be accepted as an exhibit and that he be accepted as an expert in comprehensive planning. I can have him go over a little bit about it.
Looking for a job? We'll accept Mr. Kelly's resume and his standing as an expert. I'll make that motion. Second, Jim White, all in favor?
Aye.
So, Kelly, could you tell us a little bit about your particular experience with the Warren water and first waterfronts in general?
Sure, thank you. So good evening all. I will be brief. Thank you for the time. So I've been working in planning, land use and waterfront planning for about 25 years now, and my experience is pretty diverse, specific to waterfront planning. So I've worked with communities as small as Smith Island in the Chesapeake Bay, population 300, sort of the Waterman population down there, working on issues around their economic viability. I've worked with Providence Working Waterfront Alliance. I've worked with some of the ports down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, so really large-scale industrial operations. And through the comprehensive planning process, I also worked on some sort of policy development around Galilee, one of the few remaining working waterfronts in Rhode Island. So a wide variety of different types of waterfront environments. And to your next question, here in Warren, I have testified on a number of occasions in support of or against different proposals, really revolving around this issue of, what is appropriate to the town's vision for a working waterfront.
And you looked at this particular site,
Yes,
and you've looked at the Warren Comprehensive Plan?
I have. Congratulations. I did review the plan, and like I said, I had reviewed the prior plan as well as the waterfront development plan extensively. And as you said, Mr. Chair, there's a tremendous thread of consistency throughout these documents. The vision that was set forward for water dependent and water reliant uses, you're using a new term there, or water related uses, that thread has never changed. And the idea that this needs to be protected, preserved, and recognizing the forces that threaten that is really well developed in this document, consistent all the way through.
And so based on that and based on your experience and your review of the comprehensive plan, first of all, do you have an opinion as to whether the proposal to amend this easement is at all consistent with the Warren Comprehensive Plan?
I do not think it would be consistent, and I want to say, just to the spirit of not repeating what folks have been saying, maybe what I could add to this as someone who's worked on developing over a dozen comp plans in Rhode Island, touched a lot of different ones, and I've seen the way these documents are used. And I guess I would just sort of offer to you a few specific observations. In the economic development section, you use phrases like ensure that development or redevelopment of the waterfront enhances and does not detract from its character, so forth. And another one is to support the retention and growth of key industries like the marine trades. And I see these policies get debated as time goes on. You're very fresh. You just adopted this. So you folks are really like right in the moment with this document. And as time goes on, these words that are sort of policy oriented, they get debated, like support, encourage, those sorts of things. And folks will say, well, what does that mean anyway? You really should have faith in those words that you put into this. So when you're deliberating this decision, are we encouraging? Are we supporting? You chose these words carefully. It took you 10 years, to bring this to the finish line. And you are not alone in that regard. That happens a lot. So, have support, have faith in those words that you developed and ask those questions. And then there's one more specific piece. Again, as I see this go on and I see people debate, one of the common criticisms of the comprehensive plan is, well, it could say anything, sort of like cherry pick the policies that support my stance, right? And you see that happen with a lot of zoning decisions and a lot of zoning debates. And so I always try to tell people, pick the statements that speak most directly to your issue and pick the statements that speak most poignantly to your issue. And in the comp plan, maybe for the benefit of the public, you have the housing, the transportation, the facilities, the economic developments, the natural cultural resources. You have all these different elements that have to be developed. They really do come together in the land use development at the end, which I think you probably saw. You express all of these different policy discussions with a future land use map and then a set of policies within that land use area. And rarely have I seen a policy this direct. Policy land use number 4, preserve Warren's working waterfront from the threat of conversion to land uses that are not water dependent. That's it. That is the policy that got baked through that 10-year process. That's a policy that's the planning board and the town council adopted. So, again, I think it's, as someone who's a planning enthusiast, if you will, like it's very encouraging to see the plan that you had, the water, the waterfront development plan, all this evolving and sort of coming to that single statement is really good work.
Okay.
Just one final question, then again, based on your experience and your study of this, your review, do you feel that if the proposed change of allowed uses were allowed, would it significantly alter or compromise the character of the waterfront historic district as a working waterfront?
I do, and I think I'll just sort of echo, some of the previous testimony on that as, to your advice. I agree with previous testimony. I do think it would sort of erode over time. This does happen one parcel at a time, one use at a time. You see it with any industrial use. The issue of agriculture was brought up earlier. That is an interesting point of reference. All of these different extractive industries that are tied to natural resources, once you pull that away, you really can't get that back, and it happens piece by piece.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. I appreciate your praise, but also, the sentiment. Well, anyone else from the public? Seeing nothing, we'll.
You want to say something?
Yeah, no, after the public hearing. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, at this point, I think what Mr. Kelly noted is, the
Mr.
fact
Chair.
that we have,
If I may,
yeah,
before the board starts analyzing all the evidence, I think the applicant should go back before the board.
okay,
Answer any questions that are outstanding, give a final conclusion, and then the board.
Okay.
can go in. Sorry about that.
well, it's not, this isn't a
He's the
public
applicant.
hearing.
He's
With the
the
applicant.
I guess I'm bowing to the solicitors.
Mr. Chair, he can absolutely speak. He's the applicant. We have him not closed after the public hearing, correct?
Should have read to make a closing statement.
I would just like to be able to make a closing statement as well.
Of course.
Thank you.
More than happy. That's fine with us, Mr. Chairman. One of the owners would just like to address some of the questions and make a few comments. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to say thank you to the board. Thank you to the crowd for being here for so long on our issue, and thank you to the abutters and everyone else. I just want the board to think about everything that you've heard tonight. And think about this. We bought the property in 2002 with this easement. All my abutters bought theirs after mine. They don't have this restriction on this. We were under the impression that some other people would. They didn't have it. That's fine. We didn't do our homework, right? That's number one. You don't have to be rude, sir. You come up and speak earlier. Also, but I don't think everyone's taking into consideration is that all the abutters, they're great people, yes, they have businesses, yes. They have acupuncture businesses, they sell pocketbooks, they do aquaculture, they sell jewelry out of their house, they have rental apartments that bring in some good rents. Obviously, they have the funds to hire Mr. Tights and all of these people to do that. So they're doing pretty good down there. They're doing pretty well. Their rents are up there. They're making money. It's easy to come up here and do what they just did. And that's fine. I respect them. I'm a good businessman, I think. This situation, maybe not. Maybe I made a mistake here. But what I want the board to understand is when I bought the property in 2002, we were one of the infant properties we were one of the infants in the infancy stages of the process. And we had this restriction. Mr. Bolus did a beautiful interpretation. I agree. Some of it, I don't think will work financially. Some of it may. But I want you to keep in mind that no one else is doing what has this restriction on their property but us, this specific restriction. And yes, you can say it was bought at a discount. What would you interpret as a discount? We could argue about that for hours. They bought theirs at a discount too. So I want the board to have an open mind, yay or nay. I mean, you folks make the ultimate decision on the recommendation before we move to the council. I just want you to keep in mind that what I just said. And also that we've been pretty good keepers of this property. We take care of it to the best of our abilities financially. We subsidize the rents. I mean, if I told you what we got from the woman that was here, which some of it was false, some of it's true, for a 6-month period, you can't even buy groceries that week for that amount of money that she paid, $500 to $600 a month for 6 months. So what we're charging down there for pricing is for our square footage number for our rental agreements is our decision. But we kept it pretty low. But now we just can't subsidize it. So that's why we brought in front of the board this particular idea. I think we had some pretty good representation. I think they have some pretty good facts. And a lot of the facts that they mentioned kind of goes with this whole distillery thing, if you think about it. And you may not think that a distillery is water dependent. I do. They don't. He does. He doesn't. But what I want you to keep in mind when you make a decision is that the situation that we're in now is not what we signed up for originally with surrounding properties, because they're doing well and they have different restrictions, and ours I thought was going to be similar to the neighbors, but it's not. And the town wharf isn't what they said they were going to do with it. That changed too. So we are the only ones that are almost being pinpointed. So I'm not a bully. I'm not strong arming or muscling people. I'm just strictly stating the facts. And I have no problems with my neighbors. I don't have problems with jewelry business. I don't have problems with acupuncture. I don't have problems with that. I think that's great. Good job. All of them have been business people their whole lives, and they're good business people. And I just want you to understand why we're here today, and understand that our historical interpretation of the waterfront may be different than some of you, but it's still a historical view in my eyes. And that's it. And if anyone has questions, I'll answer what you want to hear.
And briefly, I have to first say to the comment that the neighbors bought after them is actually just factually incorrect. I have here copies of the easement for 65 Church Street, which was 7th November. And I have the easement for 64 Church Street, which actually was simultaneous. It was the 15th day of November, but it actually was recorded before this one. This preservation easement that we're here tonight on was the 15th day of November. This is recorded at book 0436, page 45. And yet the one for 64 Church Street was recorded at page 1 of book 436. And 65 Church Street, was recorded in book 434. So in truth, our easements were recorded before their easement. It's not something that we came afterwards and there's some sort of thing, oh, we came later. Not that it would make a difference. I'm not even going to dignify with a response to the question of whether a distillery is water dependent. I think you've heard that. The argument they tried to make was about the restrictions on the different people. My clients own residences. Of course, that's part of the allowed use of their property. And you heard from Davis and Bolster about how the restriction on the water-dependent, water-related uses was put on the property that was right on the waterfront and always historically had been a water-related use. So I think that's all reasonable. That's all part of the scheme. I think you have to look at it. If you look at all that you've heard tonight, you've heard from Mr. Conley, and I think if you look at his, as I said, if you look at what he presented to you, what he presents to you is not proof that distillery is a water-related use. It's that the Warren waterfront was used for everything but that. And then you've also heard from Mr. Connors with the specific history. You've heard from Mr. Bolster and you've heard from Mr. Kelly. I really would strongly urge you to deny this request to amend the private easement. Thank you. Or recommend to the council that they deny this request.
Thank you. Okay. Again, I think I think the word covenant is an important and powerful word in this, because it's an agreement. And I've always believed that when someone makes an agreement, they understand the consequences of that agreement. And when they make that agreement, they live with it. From what we've heard tonight, I've heard a lot of conflicting information, and it began with a brewery and a restaurant, which was what we had to look at before we came in here. And suddenly it's a distillery. And there are two parcels being discussed here, not just one. Mr. Puri said, yeah, well, we'll be parking in my. So it's an incomplete presentation as far as I'm concerned in terms of what we have before us. Equally, and perhaps more important, is the planning board is given the responsibility of ensuring that the vision of what this town is and can be, as it is illustrated in the comprehensive plan, is in fact enforced and recognized and preserved. I believe that there are opportunities for the folks, for Scott and Angelo to find tenants who would be water related to make your business profitable. And the fact, frankly, I mean, the fact that this is the third time the planning board has heard about the need for a non-water dependent business is troubling, because we've gone through this. I went through this in 2008 when I first came on this board. This is, as clearly stated in the Trust for Public Lands agreement in the earlier comprehensive plan that Davison referenced and worked on, in our current comprehensive plan that I've worked on, and as did many of you. I mean, the faces are familiar from putting together our most recent comprehensive plan. And equally that the town council had bought into this to the extent of investing in this. And, you know, I'm sorry, you know, it's when you look at an agreement, that's your responsibility. Let the buyer beware, I guess, is that you have certain restrictions that you are asked to follow. And I cannot see that this is an economic hardship to own this land and somehow make it work. I remember when we talked about Three Rivers, there was very little work done in terms of outreach to these marine businesses, marine trades that could potentially make this a more profitable venue. So that's my position on this.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that we forward a negative reply to the council.
Before we go there, I just wanted to know, does anybody else want to?
I mean, I don't want, there's opportunity here. I just think the applicant, you know, we have an obligation to what's in front of us to follow, to make a determination. And, you know, I think it could have been pretty, you know, this is what was handed to us from the acquisition. This is, you know, we have limited to work on with what you provide, and some of the objections I think is what really moved me. And, you know, I'm just not certain in my interpretation of this, if this will lead to significantly altering that waterfront. I think it could have been presented better, and we still don't understand what is real and what's going in there. It's very broad. Whereas I think your abutters, you know, they brought some very valid concerns and they understand what we have to follow. So I just want to make a comment, like, not objected to this. I think there's opportunity, but, you know, in the end, I'm not convinced that this would not significantly alter or change that waterfront based on what we've heard from your own tenants, from your abutters, and from yourself, sir.
Sure. I haven't heard any hardships offered. Is there no other space that will work for something like this at all in Warren whatsoever? And without that hardship, then how can we feel comfortable denying that there is a covenant in place for a water dependent business. When we talk about whaling and seals and rum and lumber, those really don't necessarily fall under different uses because it's all water dependent. At the time, everything came from the Warren River. That's cargo that was maritime use or waterfront use. So I also haven't seen any other attempts at trying to make another business work here. You know, we tried another yacht club, we tried a membership fee, we tried you know, renting the parking lot, we tried anything. You know, there's been no other evidence that something you know, viable, or you know, we had an ad up and no one called. So I think all of those are contributing factors.
I think that, we have a lot of restaurants and alcohol already in downtown Warren. You know, something different would be nice, an outfitter, something, you know, other than yet another alcohol related business. There's a lot of them. And I'm a teetotaler and I don't, you know, I prefer not to see all the alcohol.
Anyone else? And then, Rick,
Make a motion that we decline this application and forward our recommendation to the town council.
and I would,
Recommend a negative.
and I would note that it is because it is in line with the comprehensive plan, and that the reason that we're doing this, we are
because of the
forwarding this is
comprehensive plan.
because the Trust for Public Lands agreements are still in effect and are being honored by those who purchased the land, that the previous comprehensive plan reinforced this. The current comprehensive plan makes it, as Mr. Kelly said, absolutely pointed as to the water dependent uses. So that, with that as the explanation for why we are forwarding that negative recommendation.
Can I comment before that motion? I mean, you can, the language of the motion is fine, but I just did you do that quickly. I share my colleagues' views on this. I think that there is I have a different opinion than some about how we address protecting the waterfront in going forward, in the sense that I think that you have to, if we end up sort of depriving any opportunity of bringing industry in by limiting it into one strict category, we could cause problems in the whole industry itself. I think that what would be, if the problem with this scenario was that it wasn't presented in a manner, like I would be inclined to entertain something that had a more comprehensive plan that sort of guaranteed a stronger working waterfront industry, sort of adjacent to something that was the compromise, as opposed to just looking at the element of the compromise in hope of maintaining what was existing, if that makes any sense. And so I think that, you know, a deeper, further expanded presentation on something like that is something worth reconsidering. I just don't know that we have any way with that, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to.
Yeah, part of that motion, I recommend a finding that the proposed change will significantly alter or compromise the character of the waterfront historic district, because that's the standard that is inside of
The comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Did you get that? What was that? Okay. Yes, I'd agree with that. Right, Rick? You're
Yep.
good with that?
Yes.
Okay. A second to that motion?
Second.
Second, Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
That's it, folks.
What's next on the agenda?
Gotta do Pick and Village School, don't we?
We do have another,
Two more.
matter to discuss, so if you can, vacate. Yeah, we'll take a break here for 5 minutes. 5-minute break. Second,
Aye.
motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Holy shit. Ah, I mean. In a more specific- We have the agenda. Got so much different paper here. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Kickhamere Middle School, 525 Charles Street, Lot 19, Lot 27. Pardon me, and 70. This is a preliminary plan. It's a public hearing. This regards the interior renovations and site improvements for the south parking lot, as well as the Hugh Cole Elementary, 50 Asylum Road, Plat 19, Lot 56 and 52. This is again a preliminary plan, public hearing, interior renovations and site improvements. I think what we'll do is probably go through the Kickamuet one first. That allows people to speak specifically to that, and then move to the Child Street if that works for you folks.
Yes.
Great. And oh, one other thing, you received all of the correspondence relative to this prior to the meeting?
Yes, we received it on Wednesday.
Okay, great.
Great, just a brief introduction. I know that we've been here in the past, but my name is Liz Pecora. I'm an architect for Perkins Eastman. I'm here with Dave Potter, who is our civil engineer with PAR, and we're here representing the Bristol Warren Regional School District for the capital improvement projects to Kickamuet and Hugh Cole. So I'm going to let Dave take us through some of the improvements we're making.
Great. We'll be as brief as we can with our presentation. I know you've it's been a long night already, and we have a lot more to go through, so, but
No, but we will give you our full attention, believe me, so.
I appreciate it, but please feel free to ask questions if you do. Again, for the record, my name is David Potter. I'm a civil engineer with Park Corporation. We presented the master plan in this room back in October, late October 2024, where we received approval for master plan with 2 waivers, one for a 10% reduction in landscape, and the second for the ability to submit preliminary plan without our CRMC approval in hand. Both those waivers were granted. We also have with us tonight, in addition to me and Lisa, we have a few more folks from Perkins Eastman. Our landscape architect is here. We have from Traverse Landscape Architects, we have PMA, the owner's representative, several folks there, and we also have the superintendent and her staff as well to answer your questions. So since you saw the plan, there have been minor changes to increase the level of detail, but the same general site circulation and the amount of improvements that were proposed in master plan are the same. Just quickly to review, what we have here is in the existing condition, we have one giant parking lot. It's all parking from pretty much the school all the way to the field. The area is striped for buses and parents to come in, for staff to park. One of the difficulties in the lot, because there's no separation or sort of circulation pattern, is keeping things organized during the arrival and then the pickup periods. So one of the goals for the school has been to redesign the parking lot in a way that provides some more structure during for that circulation to happen, keeping parents, people picking up parents pick up their children and buses separated. That's the key, is to keep those separated. We also wanted to provide safety improvements for the students to be able to walk safely across sidewalks as they head south or north away from the site. So what we've done here is we came up with we went through a number of alternatives, and what worked best for the school is to have 2 parking lots. We have the parking lot on the east side, north is up. We have Hugh Cole Road to the right here. The athletic field is here, and then the existing building is up here. Buses will enter the northern curb cut. They will stack along this edge. The number of buses we have, we will fill that whole edge, and we'll have a few more queued waiting for the next round in the afternoon. So the students will load safely from the sidewalk. In the meantime, parents can stack. We have a nice long queue for parents that starts here and goes all the way back to here. The loading zone for students will be this portion right here. So it's a much larger increase in loading zone for both buses and for students. That was one of the other goals, was to try to keep the traffic off Hugh Cole Road, get as many cars into the site as possible. In addition, we have parking as well for parents who arrive early and want to wait. Staff parking will be in the eastern lot. There are separate curb cuts for the bus and for the parents. So the parents will be coming in and out one curb cut, and the buses will be coming out that eastern curb cut there. The lot will be separated by a movable plastic barricade, so that if for some reason in the future they want to modify how this works, they can move that barricade. It also allows the stormwater, which currently flows from north to south, to continue flowing north to south along the curb. Other improvements for,
What is that plastic barricade? It's not bollards or anything.
it's not driven into the ground. There'll be temporary, almost like a temporary Jersey barrier type barricade.
Bill, will you sand fill or water fill?
Typically they're sand filled. In addition to what you see here, we have a connection to Orchard Avenue, which exists today. Orchard Avenue is a residential neighborhood to the west. So this is just looking to the west. This drive is going to remain. However, we're going to block this off with a gate. We will add at the end of Orchard Avenue a hammerhead to allow vehicles to turn around. We've reviewed this with the fire department, and they're comfortable with it. They will have a key to that gate as well if they ever did need to move through in an emergency. Most of the lot is going to be milled and overlaid, so we're really making minimal changes to the grades here. We are making grade changes to this lot, and that will be new pavement down to the base course, because we have to shift some things around to make accessible grades. The accessible spaces are here and then here. One of the big points we heard from the master plan hearings was that this parking area really serves the athletic fields. This is the primary entrance to the athletic facility during games and events. So we have our ADA spaces here and parking right along this whole row. We looked to maximize that based on the feedback that we had to help support the games and when those events are taking place. As far as stormwater, we do have 2 tree box filters. So when we met last in October, we didn't have our test pits yet. We did our test pits. We found high water table. We found a mix of soils. They weren't the greatest soils for infiltration, but they are able to take runoff for tree box filters. So we have a tree box filter in this island right over here.
What is, can you define that?
So a tree box filter is typically a 2-foot deep depression with a filter media on the bottom. It's a mixture of sand and compost that'll allow the water to infiltrate. It's planted with various plantings. And it's a system that's part of the DEM stormwater manual. It's we call it a best management practice. That filters out pollutants before the water's then sent on to the rest of the drainage system. So we have,
Which would then go to the drain that parallels the football, the athletic fields on the other side.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So we have a tree box filter here, and we have another tree box filter here. So this tree box filter picks up the northern portion of the parking area, but we can get to it. And then the remaining area will flow to this tree box filter, where it enters through curb cuts along this curb line here, goes into that tree box filter. From there, the pipes take the runoff into the existing, there's an existing drain line that runs along parallel with the southern edge of the parking area and discharges to a wetland. And so we
Now we know that discharges to a wetland?
we do.
So because that was one of the concerns.
It was. And so what we had done, one of the requests of the board or discussion we had was whether we should inspect that pipe. So we did have a firm run a camera through that pipe. They started at this first. There's an existing trench drain here. This is the head of the drainage system. There's a pipe that goes from that curtain drain, they call it a curtain drain on drawings, to this curtain drain here. And then that extends to a drain structure and then out to the outfall. So all 3 of those pipes were cambered. And we have those reports. We found a coat hanger in the first section, and we also found a collapsed pipe just before curtain drain 2. And so on the plans that we submitted, this plan set here, we're showing the replacement of that pipe. So we're replacing that pipe to pretty much to the limit of our.
And remove the coat
service.
hanger.
And the coat hanger will be returned to its owner.
Is that pipe located on the asphalt on the roadway or?
That pipe is located, I'll show you right here. It's on the south side of the fence. The pipe's located on the south side of the fence, right here. And we're gonna replace it to this point here. We'll be adding manholes for access, and we're gonna provide a new trench drain at the main entrance to the field. We're gonna install a grate with pedestrian friendly openings. The gate grate that's out there now is pretty large.
What kind of maintenance do those tree boxes require?
So the maintenance is outlined. We had to submit a operation maintenance plan to CRMC. We also sent that into the planning department. They require the removal of trash and debris every, say, quarterly. And then as the sediment accumulates, that'll need to be removed. We do have a pre-treatment device where we can. We have outlet hoods on this structure here to take that sediment load and stop it from getting to that tree box filter. On this tree box filter, this is actually the filter. The rest of this is a sediment forebay. So any trash or debris or sediment that comes off the parking lot from, the standing operations in the winter, that can be cleaned out.
Who will do that?
The town will. So it's
Has
required.
the town agreed
Not
to
the
that?
town. I'm sorry, the school department, the owner will.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What about the-
Whoa.
What about the maintenance of the drainage line? Who's gonna maintain the drainage line?
Maintenance of the drainage line, I mean, if there ever was an issue, all this drainage is on the town's property, so the new drainage system will extend from here to here, over here. This brings all that water through into that pipe. And then I would expect that this section really serves the school. I would imagine the school would be maintaining that. If there was ever a clog, another coat hanger, another collapse, they would wanna take that and clean it up.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Just
Sure,
in
yeah.
regards to the letter we received from the Director of Public Works.
Yep.
Should we address that now? Do you want to address that later or?
Well, I think we can do it in,
As we go.
piecemeal or,
Okay.
as we go along. I mean, one of the concerns had been that the integrity of that drain pipe, and clearly, you've repaired it, which was not clear in that
Yeah.
memo that we got in terms of, what that was.
Yep.
The other main issue that has come up both from the Tree Commission and from the Department of Public Works is the fact that, this is an opportunity to take a hot spot in town of asphalt and give it a little coolness. And, there have been recommendations for swales, grassy swales that could be within this really massive parking lot without the need for curb, not unlike the kind of the boxes that you're talking about, but these were more like what we used in a development off Twislet Road. It's essentially a grassy area that comes down and allows it's a catch basin, but it's a green catch basin. And within that, you can put a tree. So you create a canopy as well.
Can I ask, you've got on the parking plan, striped off areas at the end of each row of parking. We asked the question, I can't remember the answer. Is there a reason why those aren't landscaped aisles?
Yes, so one of some of the concerns, one of the elements that the school was trying to achieve with this parking layout was flexibility.
Right.
So we have a lot of buses, a lot of students, and they're all coming in 2 different lots. The idea was to keep the lot as flexible as possible. With only striping, if they wanted to modify, if they wanted to double up a lane to accommodate more buses, or if they needed to, whatever they do, they have less flexibility if they have an island. And that was one of the reasons that parking on the interior was shied away from. The so you know, we have a we have a reduction in impervious area on this project. So we worked to remove impervious surface from this large parking lot. Some of the hot mix asphalt will be removed and replaced with sidewalk, where the pedestrians are gonna walk. But there's also areas where we're gonna be providing landscaping. So we will have landscaping along the center of this island here. We are expanding the island, fronting on Hugh Cole Road, and there'll be a series of trees planted here. And then back here, between the maintenance building and Orchard Avenue, we're removing all this pavement back here. In addition, the tree box filter here works exactly like that swale that you just described, ma'am. That's exactly what this does. This takes that water off the paved area. It's all planted. And then it will have growth in it. So it cleans it just very similar to how the swale you just described
Okay.
does. So
I'm sorry, what?
I just want to add one. point.
Sure, yeah, please do. Go ahead.
So, one of the, I know David, explained how the buses could queue around the sidewalk, but one of the desires from the school actually is to use the Chevron parking, which actually stacks the buses in the center area. There was also concerns about ease of plowing, of not having to have all of the curves planted, because we actually did have a design with that at one point in time. So.
And overall, for impervious area, we're reducing by about 6,500 square feet. So we do
Of
have
a total of what?
of the total percentage from the existing parking area. I don't have that offhand, but I can find that out. It's a reduction of 6,500 square feet, yeah. Yeah, we qualify as a redevelopment for the stormwater manual.
So is the added tree canopy in response to the Director of Public Works comments? You said you had the added tree canopy on the front and then,
No, we always had that in there. It's just,
Okay.
We also
Yeah.
added some trees, over into, the planted area, along the school as well.
So you've seen the heat map that was in both the Public Works letter and the Tree Commission's letter, and the heat map is centered right smack on this parking lot.
I think a lot of it's on the building as well, too.
Is there opportunities to also put trees in that island?
Well, there will be plantings in this island.
Yeah,
here.
plantings are not trees.
They're not trees, no.
Trees generate far more retention of rainwater, deflect far more heat, provide a wonderful place for people to walk underneath as they're traveling to their parents' cars or to their bus.
Can you do trees in those kinds of boxes?
Yes, in some. We have, this is pretty tight, and we have stormwater management, we have a pipe running underneath that island, which is why we kept the plantings
So
small.
that's
in that area.
16 feet, and I presume that, or you've got 5 feet for each sidewalk and 5 feet for the middle or something along those
Something
lines.
along those lines. I think it's, probably 5, and there's a curb as well, so it
Right.
takes up a foot.
Well, and I wasn't
Yeah.
counting the curve when I measured 16 feet.
No, it's a fair estimate.
I mean, granted, there's a lot of people walking around there. I want to see more trees here. I'm sitting on the tree canopy commission.
Right.
And I'm just pulling my hair, trying to figure out how we can make town facilities better at managing the heat issues that are only going to get worse.
I mean, I agree with you. My daughter's going to attend this school. I really appreciate your thought process in the circulation plan and the ability to be flexible as a population of the school changes. So I do agree. I think it's a tough approach. We're balancing, safety and circulation for the school as it grows. Which one, for me, safety and circulation is definitely a priority for our family.
If we're doing some of the striped area for stacking, can maybe some of those striped area be released back to landscape islands for trees? Maybe at the southern end or on the western lawn?
I mean, it might be possible, we talked about, in response to the comments, maybe, because we did have a meeting with the DPW director this afternoon. We talked about the possibility of adding some plantings maybe on the perimeter of the parking area. Maybe we could look at putting some out here on the outskirts like this, or even maybe putting some plantings.
Yeah, I think, people are thinking more like in the, and obviously, safety and circulation are most important. I mean, I watched this thing, unfold and was filled with terror when I thought of, kids dealing with that. So, I mean, this is the first and foremost, that's what we're looking for. But at the same time, if we can add that kind of canopy, I mean, a bush is different from a tree. And it makes aesthetically, is as well as environmentally. It's an opportunity that we have now to make this something other than just a hard parking lot. And if, like, for example, how many buses is this made to accommodate,
Well, I can also say that on the bus thing, I used to coach at Kickamuet, and that you would have, it's a different animal on different times, because you would have the regular bus route where it fills. And then if you had two extracurricular activities that involved other buses coming, or you bring your extra buses, they would typically be parked out in that open area. So they were out of the way of the bus lane, more in that one. And so, and then maybe the opposing team, if it was it would park over there. But if you had all the ends of the rows were landscape areas, it would be much more difficult for a bus to just move around and do like 360s all over the place. So I would think that if you wanted to do it, you would probably want to limit that to an area so the buses could do their thing,
Well, I mean, again, the question is, how many buses are we accommodating? Do you know?
Yeah, so, when we do the Chevron parking, we can get over 16 buses in the core here. When we queue around the outskirts, safest way is just queue into here, gets us 10 buses.
Oh,
We
wow.
have, and we have 6 that are queued out here, the remainder, and they come in for the second shift.
Okay, so we're talking 26,
We're talking
30,
16
30
buses.
30 buses.
16 buses.
at a time.
16, yeah.
At a time.
Right.
And, so this,
Oh,
So there are other, I mean, we might, I might be wrong, but I mean, it would seem that the second parking lot has got a lot of spaces that would be used, if there's a football day or something like that, but this other section is really more bus oriented. And could that be a location for, a few islands with trees?
Or alternatively, the horizontal, where the bollards or the barriers are gonna go. That's not a pedestrian area, correct?
this here is not a pedestrian area now.
So would that be plantings without sidewalks? Again,
Well,
I
they wanted
recognize that there's.
I think they wanted it to access back and forth.
Yeah, it helps with flexibility in the future, should the plan in the future be changed for Chevron parking, Chevron style, which is where the buses are all angled. It provides more flexibility to, if this needs to be utilized, that's the reason they have that there. They're specific, we're trying to avoid a fixed island in that
Right.
location to allow that connection between the two.
But do we need all of that car parking in that same area? I mean, what is it?
We have 207 spaces required and we're providing 217.
Okay.
Is there a change from parking spaces?
Well, so existing, we have 124 on the application, but that's because the striping is old and worn away. It's not really organized, so.
You're kind of striped, not necessarily what could be.
Right, if it was striped out, the maximum would be larger than the 124 that we mentioned in the application.
Yeah, that was my question, wondering if you needed all that parking, could eliminate some spaces to accommodate.
Don't have a lot of excess to remove. Again, we have 5 trees here. We have trees along the southern edge of the building that we're adding. We've got plantings here. We've got plantings here. We could add more plantings out here. That would give us sort of We have plantings on the.
Yeah, I think what we're looking for is a few more, if we could get them in more toward the center, because on the edges, it's okay, but it's, you know, it's,
yes, do the edges too,
right,
but if
but
there's any way that you can get them at the very least in that center aisle.
We have our landscape architect.
No.
oh,
This is
all right.
Traverse. Hi, Chris Pradner, Traverse Landscape Architects. I think what Dave and Lisa are saying is absolutely true. I mean, we're trying to be budget conscious on this capital improvement project as well, but there's certainly areas over here near the maintenance building. There's areas down in the south end near the field, which then will shade the parking lot just based on the solar orientation plan. So we can certainly look at more areas. We did have trees down the center island at one point, but just due to the stormwater management and the utilities, we would have a tree right over a pipe, and that's not a very good thing to have long-term. So we can certainly look around more of the edges.
Right.
Could you expand that center lane to accommodate? Well, I mean, again, I know what you're talking about. You don't want tree roots going into the drain. And you
think
don't
that's
want a
another-
shallow tree root.
Should we also be considering the budget? I mean, this is town money, right? Like, would that be a consideration we take in when we're discussing this, or should it be strictly on the planning of the site?
Uh,
Well, they're proposing a lot more trees than there already are out there. So what they're proposing, I think is reasonable. Because
I
I
don't-
agree
would
that
agree.
there's a lot of maintenance issues inside there. You've got snow, you've got
yeah.
the raking of the leaves. I mean, you're going to create a nightmare for the school to have to maintain. And I just don't think that it's,
But I mean, the
I like
difference,
the plan like it is.
if you put, for example, that middle row of car parking places, no, up above. Yep, right there. You know, two,
But
to
that's where they
four
want to
good
put, they
size-
need to put buses on.
no, that's above, I believe.
Uh-uh.
The chevron. That's where the, oh, that would be used for the
Yes.
buses as well, that second row. So the third row, is that,
Well, the
Teacher
buses are
parking.
The buses are like- Yeah,
oh, I see, so,
Third
yeah,
parking.
okay,
The opportunity seems to be in the western lot, if anything.
I got you.
When you guys designed this, I mean, you guys were very budget conscious and you thought about, down the road where we won't have to spend money if we do have to alter this to accommodate whether it's an expansion or increase in parking, right?
Basically accommodating the flexibility that the
Yeah.
school wanted. Yep.
Excuse me, my name is Joe Dunn, I'm with Lisa and the team here, Perkins Eastman. One of the things that was mentioned was the heat island effect. And they probably mentioned that the existing building contributes to that. One of the things that we are doing is we are replacing the roof with a white roof. So we're going to be reducing significant amount of heat island on the building based upon the roof that we are putting. in.
54,000 square feet.
I need the full name.
Joseph Brown, BROW. And in addition to the albedo effect of the roof, you'll have that on the sidewalks as well.
Right.
That sidewalk out in the middle, so as far as reducing heat island, the sidewalks will help with that, the color of the concrete, that very good color.
In terms of the discharge into the wetland, where is that wetland?
The wetland is further to the west.
Is it, it's,
not here.
which I'm assuming empties into the Kickamuit River.
Believe it does, yes. Yeah. I think I have it on the survey here.
It does, it's right, but the
Yeah.
bridge is
Well,
right next to it.
There's a flood zone here, our property, our work is not in the flood zone, but this all discharges to this wetland here, which goes to the Kickamuit.
Okay, is there any kind of filtration for the runoff at the pipe's end?
There is the tree box.
I mean, I know there's no, but once it gets into
Once it reaches the
the pipe,
Once it comes out of the pipe, it goes into the wetland. There's no other
Mitigation.
DMP mitigation along the way. So as far as meeting stormwater requirements, the project is a redevelopment. So DEM and CRMC have a calculation that we do to see what the minimum requirement is. We've exceeded that.
Oh,
And we're
okay.
reducing impervious area by 6,500 square feet.
and
So-
they would have to approve the end of pipe discharge.
That's correct. It's an existing discharge. This is all existing parking area, existing drainage. We're bettering the situation by taking out pavement, putting in concrete sidewalks, and we're adding landscaping.
Okay.
6,500 square feet of lost pavement is 6,500 square feet of landscaping that we're adding. So we've made that submission to CRMC. We're waiting for their comments to come back to us. Hoping to hear from them.
Yeah.
Soon.
The sheet flow from the parent western parking lot, does that doesn't go into the tree box, that goes directly to the field?
That
correct?
goes directly to
Right.
the curb along the entire south edge. In the existing condition, there's an asphalt curb. We're pulling that out. We're putting in a new concrete curb. That's the southern end of the property line. And then we're gonna send that water into catch basins. We're putting in, right now, there's only two, they're trench drains. That's it. We're gonna have double catch basins. We've got a series of them, in addition to the tree box filter, to get that water off the parking lot and reduce the pump. That should also reduce the amount of times that this curb overflows and goes into the field. That was something else we talked about a lot. Master plan was making sure that didn't happen anymore, or reduce the likelihood.
Anything else?
I'll make one tiny note, the sheets that are the north orientation whole project, two of them, the north arrow is wrong.
I will fix that. That's probably the next sheet with the water line, yes. So as part of this project, we also have a request from the fire department to bring a hydrant closer to this entrance. So we are proposing a hydrant on the northeast corner of that parking lot. That was part of the master plan submission. To feed that hydrant, we are extending a water main up to Child Street. So we have so here's where north is now to me, to the left. We have a new water main that'll go all the way to Child Street here, and that will feed that hydrant.
And that's at the request of the fire chief.
That's correct.
There was a comment on that too.
I'm sorry, Will?
Wasn't there a comment on that about the asphalt replacement going curb to curb? Let me check.
There was. So there was a comment from the DPW about, so we're proposing to replace the pavement with hot mix asphalt where we patch the road. So the road would be cut, the water main would be installed, and then the pavement would be replaced. The edges would be saw cut neatly and replaced. And the DPW had just said it would be better if the school was to mill and overlay the entire roadway. That would be a heavy cost for the school to bear. We did talk about it with the owner. It seems to be a heavy cost that wouldn't really fit in the project, to mill and overlay the entire roadway.
Okay. Open it up for a public hearing. Make a motion to, unless there's anything else. Okay. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. And have a second, Jenny, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good evening, Board and Chairman. I heard, we've seen him mention that this is a big heat sink area.
Oh, you need to introduce yourself first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I know you.
Charles Staton, Warren Tree Commission.
Liz Andriotti's Warren Tree Commission.
I apologize.
No problem.
And this is a big heat sink area. I believe we passed the heat maps
Yeah.
to the planning board. And I know it was mentioned that they're trying to put some trees around the edges, but if there's any opportunity in the painted islands or in the middle zone to have trees, we feel it would be very important. This is a chance. This is a time. You know, the parking lot's going to be stripped and reworked, and this is the time to think about this and do everything that is possible to plant trees to help with the heat and help, I believe, with the, well, not me, but many people believe, with the mental health of the people walking in and out of that school, of the schools. So also, where there's some, we looked at the plants and there's some shrub areas. Maybe some of those shrubs can turn into trees. So there can be a potential future canopy trees. We also heard about, the word budget. And we could have sources to help out with buying trees. Right now, there's a few grants available. Right now, Warren is doing the Warren Tree Canopy Council is in existence for this year. And possibly we could help out with that situation, with the purchase of trees. So we're just urging everything that the engineers and the architects can do, finding your spots and opportunities to plant trees with canopy.
No, I agree, and I, you know, we have been talking about this, and I believe that, these folks are gonna act in good faith to try and increase the amount of trees within the constraints of the circulation and safety.
Right.
I mean, your offer is generous, but again, I think one of the difficulties there is that it's not just the trees, it's also the maintenance of them and how that impacts their ability to, you know, plow the. I mean, I believe that it is possible to put some trees in here, because I think aesthetically it helps. You know, mental health is part of this aesthetics, and it would be good if we can put more green into this wherever possible. And particularly, I mean, the edges seem to be well represented, but in the center of these parking areas, you know, even one tree that grows, you know, a large oak or a maple, you know, something that grows relatively quickly and big, I think could make a huge difference in terms of how it's viewed by the students and the town.
Right.
Have you previously engaged the applicant about providing support financially for the trees from the tree committee? Have there been conversations before?
We have not.
Okay,
We have not, but we are doing it now.
perfect. Thank you.
Because we've become aware of some granting situations and funding situations.
Again, if you can, I think the plan here is to build this summer, correct?
That's correct.
So,
Yes, the plan is to start construction this summer.
right, so I would say, you know, it needs to happen as soon as possible.
And the last thing we want to do is have this construction going on when our kids are starting school, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think swift action is needed on an application like this.
Right, well, I think there's, we received a presentation from the HEDS Health Equity Zone Grant, and they're looking for ways to support the environment, opportunities to support the environment.
Well, again, if the landscape, if you can come up with any recommendations, they'd be greatly appreciated, and, you know, we would certainly look with favor upon it.
That's under construction now, the outdoor learning zone on the property. So I
Yes.
know they're looking for funding for landscaping, the next phase of it, so I think that'd be great, you know, so some of that funding you mentioned.
Yes.
So.
I'm familiar.
The other thing that came to our attention on the tree canopy committee is these sidewalk tree boxes that where the sidewalk sits in part on top of the tree box. You remember the presentation on that, Chuck?
Yes,
For the landscape architect, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Are you
Chris.
familiar with these structures? It's a relatively new design that's been approved, I think, by DVM.
Oh, yeah.
there's
And are
drainage
there,
under the tree.
would there be
Uh,
opportunities
that's-
to incorporate any of that into this plan to provide more? Would that be another possibility of getting more trees in the plan?
Right, I think if it helps with drainage and stormwater, I think we definitely can look at it. I mean, right now, we've got the tree box filters that are doing everything that you need, for stormwater. I think there's some open space that we can look at, and I would go back to the team and look at anything within the parking lot, we'd have to work with the school district.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, or is that it? I'm gonna,
Sure. So,
can I was gonna close the public hearing. Is that okay? I mean, and then, you know, I mean, your question, I just don't want to forget. Because it's way past my bedtime, I can tell you that. But I get up very early. Motion to close the public hearing. Second, Tyler, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Allison, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Is that their recommendation? Is that something?
Yes.
The solution here, that gate access and that being there.
right, so we did work with the fire department, more heavily during the master plan to get to the layout that you have before you. There will be a key that the fire department will have to that gate through Orchard Avenue, so in the event of an emergency, they need to get back and forth through Orchard Avenue, they'll have that ability. All the drive aisles around the site have been sized large enough to allow a fire truck to navigate through them. They'll handle school buses and fire trucks, those will be the two biggest vehicles. We do have a connection between the two lots right here, so we have our connection down here. This is a speed table, so it's a little bump to keep speeds down. There'll be another speed table here, which will be really pedestrian dominated. This is not gonna be something people are crossing day to day. But if the fire department needs to get from this lot to this lot, they have that ability. That was a specific request from the fire department to have that mountable surface there.
And that's also concrete.
That's also, yes.
There's also signs here, do not
Right.
enter signs for
The-
regular cars.
Yeah, those are actually pavement. Those are hot mix asphalt. The hash didn't just come. But those could be made concrete.
Which would
Reduce
albedo.
Yeah.
And provide a greater visual cue to slow down traffic or keep them from going through it.
So does that answer your questions on emergency access?
Right. Do you want to take this in chunks? You know, we'd be looking at our approval of this preliminary plan for this part and then move to the I'd make a motion to accept the plan with the considerations as discussed, which was, you know, adding the
Additional trees.
additional trees wherever possible.
And replacing crosswalks with concrete. Instead of asphalt
Bumps,
where
speed bumps.
practicable.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so that's the motion.
I would second that.
Second, Tim White.
Well, so the pipe that's going to be replaced, what is the length of that? Do you have an approximate length?
I do.
219.
Thank you.
Okay. Record, and then, Matt, we were at the meeting, I was at the meeting staff, but.
Yeah, plus the 13 feet.
So we met today, response to the DPW's Director Wheeler's memo that he sent to you. He unfortunately can't make it tonight, so I'm speaking for what his concerns were. His concern was the pipe going from the parking lot out to the Kickamuit Reservoir. He believes that that pipe was abandoned, that it's not being utilized. His concern would be as to maintenance and liability. So he believes that if the school department hooks up to that pipe, then he would recommend that they now take responsibility of the pipe. Obviously a legal battle that this is something that he brought up. Cause I know the school department's gonna say that, you know, that's our pipe, but that's one of the issues that he had that he wanted me to address to you tonight.
Is it not already being used? That pipe that goes out to the Kickamuit River, I thought you said it had a clothes hanger and it was
Yeah,
being
yeah.
used.
He's just talking about a liability relation, who owns the potential
Who's
damage
responsible
repair.
for the maintenance and?
And that's kind of why I asked about who's gonna maintain it, right? Like,
Sure.
is it gonna fall on
So
Public Works?
I can just talk about the pipe and which properties it's on. So the property line, is right here. This property is actually the town's, this property is the schools. The pipe starts here at this trench drain. We're replacing 13 feet plus 219 feet. So that's a total of 232 feet of pipe. That'll all be replaced, and that's where the coat hanger and the broken section of pipe was uncovered. So that will be all removed and replaced with the brand new pipe down to a new drain structure here. At this point, we'll connect into the existing pipe. The existing pipe continues to the west towards the outfall. There is another existing pipe that comes from the athletic field that joins that pipe as well. So there's drainage from the athletic field that goes to that pipe that then continues down into the wetland.
Is that pipe operational?
The pipe from, we did not camera anything on the athletic field. We just cameraed from here out to the outfall, and this section was operational. If we can forward the inspection report, which has images and a summary of what was found. There was a change in material. The pipe looks like it's concrete, and then it had a couple places where it was broken and patched. And then there's a section that it goes HDPE for the rest of the way to the outlet. So,
I mean, frankly, you've repaired something that was a town pipe that wasn't functioning.
that's correct. This is is the pipe on town property
Right.
that wasn't functioning. It will
With
be
that
functioning.
219.
And we've added several manholes, so we added a manhole here, just downstream of the first trench drain. Another manhole downstream of the second trench drain.
And
And
then,
then the rest of the drainage we're adding is catch basins on the school property.
and then the discharge from that pipe would be regulated by CRMC DEM in terms of its viability. I mean, a wetland is a filter, so my guess is that they're probably gonna approve that.
It's an existing pipe, and we made a strong case that we're improving the existing condition.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so the motion to approve the preliminary plan with the conditions as discussed.
The board makes the following findings of facts based on the testimony and evidence presented today, that the proposed development is consistent with the comp plan. The proposed development is in compliance with standards and provisions of the town of Warren zoning ordinance. That there's no significant negative environmental impacts from the proposed plan. And finally, that the plan will have adequate physical access to a public street.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's CRMCD, but I mean, they've got to meet the final plan.
Yeah, Yeah. Yeah, and if we could include, if we could handle CRMC, the final plan submission administratively, that would be a request of the applicant.
I see no reason why you can.
Okay.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
we got all that? Great. So that's the motion, and I can I have a second?
Yes.
Tim, Rick, sorry. Rick, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. On to you, Cole.
You. Great, so Hugh Cole, Elementary School, we received master plan on the same date as, we received master plan approval for Kikanewit. There were, again, 2 waivers for this property, this project that were granted. One was the 10% landscape islands, that requirement was waived. We also, the waiver requested was to submit preliminary concurrent with our CRMC submission, which you allowed. And then we also had a waiver for opaque fencing for parking lots adjacent to residential uses. That was granted at master plan. The site's located at 50 Asylum Road. North is up. We have Asylum Road to the west of the school. There are no building additions. There are interior renovations that are going to be happening. We have about 149 existing parking spaces. We're going to end up with 146. Required is 135, so we exceed the required number of parking spaces by 11. We have created some improvements to improve site circulation during arrival and drop off, which again was a major concern of the school. In the proposed condition, we have the new parking. The area in the west of the school is a parking area. We are going to mill and overlay much of this parking area. And we're coming up with a slightly different traffic pattern to bring parents in through the parking lot and extend the queue lane. One of the major issues here is that the queue length for parents picking up and dropping off gets into Asylum Road and it can block traffic. So we're using all 3 lanes here to allow more queue space for those vehicles. Parents will enter here, go through the loading zone, which is to the west of the school, and then exit left back out to the roadway. Buses will be entering this northern curb cut, and they'll be stacking along the east end of the building. There's a sidewalk that we're proposing to give the students a safe place to stage when the buses are when they go out to the buses. We have a loading area back here. This is where the existing is mechanical equipment here. There are dumpsters, and they have deliveries coming in and out. Buses will then continue after they pick up the students. They will continue on through this area, which is a paved playground or paved play area, I should say. And then out this southern curb cut here, back onto Asylum Road. There will be a gate added here at this location, so there will be no through vehicles. People can't drive through the back of the school. It's a big security issue. Everybody wanted to have like this area, this play area gated off. So there's a gate added here and a gate added here to stop circulation here during the school hours. It'll be opened up when the buses need to get.
Okay, so at night it'll be open.
I think the police.
They wanted it closed, I thought, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You can park here and
Walk in.
and walk into the playground, the 2 playgrounds that are here.
Yeah.
But this parking would be open for the public.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that was also going to serve the administrative offices.
That's correct. The administrative offices will be housed here. We've added a small parking area. There's a small cutout of Asylum Road here. We're adding parking along that small cutout and a sidewalk to serve that, those spaces for a few visitors.
This was the original bus stop.
Yeah.
And there's existing playgrounds out here. Those are all going to remain. This was a playground we talked a lot about in master
Yeah, the
plan.
recreation director had concerns about that.
That's all staying. We're sticking with this loop over here, so we will not be impacting that
Great.
at all. We do have a separate parking area on the north side that will remain for the pre-K. Overloading.
We had boulders along the road. It was asked at the last meeting that every other boulder we make a tree instead.
Yeah.
We've done that, yeah.
There's a concern with people parking on this property when they go to use the park to the north. So deterrents to parking along this edge have been added to the plan. So boulders and trees have been used. For stormwater, we did our test pits. Groundwater was higher than we were hoping it was, so we had difficulty getting any best management practices in here. But we were able to decrease pavement by 12,500-ish square feet. So taking a lot more pavement out, we feel that gives us an improvement to CRMC. Runoff from this parking lot goes to an existing stormwater BMP. There's a large crushed stone basin in the front of the school. We'll be adding a long landscape swale that runs along the eastern side of the school and discharges out towards the wetland. What we couldn't fit in was any deep infiltration systems. So we have a very shallow stone trench in the northeast corner of the lot. That's a little bit of a low point, and that'll give us some infiltration. Well, not technically a BMP meeting the DN requirements. We didn't need that to meet the DM requirements because we have such a large reduction in impervious area. We're claiming that as our, you know, our improvement to the downstream.
Sure. Any questions or concerns? I don't think the DPW director had anything on Hugh Cole. It was primarily the Kickapoo. We could open it for public meeting. I make a motion to open this as a public meeting. Second, Tyler, all in favor? Anyone out there? Anyone? Yeah, right.
It's on my backup.
Yeah, really, wow. All right, well, I'll make a motion to close the public meeting.
Second.
All in favor? I see no issues here.
Bicycle circulation and,
Is there bicycle parking in the front?
I think there's existing bicycle parking in front, we're not impacting it.
for both schools, like KMS and. We're adding, bike parking to KMS. Okay, great. You have the bike path right there.
Yeah, and absolutely, really good point, Allison. That will make a significant difference because the bridge is done.
No, I do actually don't.
Bridge from where?
No, it's to somewhere, I hope. Transportation Committee?
Not to a, don't they have a.
It's just a different number.
Yeah.
It's the nowhere on the other side of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something that you want to take a look at, make sure that there's enough bike parking at both, because this will make, I mean, the purpose of that bridge across the Kickamuit to the bike path spur was safe to schools. And it allows people from the western side of the town, which is
The
where
populated side, yeah.
the most populous part of it, to come across and on bicycles or on foot rather than go down Child Street. So, and that's going to be kicking in real soon, I hope.
Not just an afterthought and throwing a bike rack against the building, but really like thinking about it with the whole renovation, making sure it's thought.
Yeah, really important.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to approve a preliminary plan with those, conditions, being the approval by CRMC, DM, you know, for that, the bike racks and a bike dedicated area in both. I mean, we passed picking me up, but
Now we'll
in our minds, we'll go back. Yeah. Okay, so,
Final approval.
The motions are based on the evidence testimony that was presented at this meeting, plan. It's compliance standards for which the town of Warren's own significant negative environmental impacts, and finally that code will have permanent physical access.
Final approval of the administrator.
yeah, final approval.
Yeah,
That's
there's
great.
issues for it, but I think that, yeah.
Great. Okay, second? Second, Tim, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you
your
very
work.
much.
Good night.
One last thing that we have to do as a board, is to, accept the continuance of the,
Settlers. Green.
Settlers Green.
Yeah.
So we're, gonna propose we, accept the continuance requested by the attorney for Settlers Green.
And the purpose again is related to the studies that the town has asked for them to.
Engineering, the engineering review has not yet taken place, is my understanding.
Okay, so we're still, and so that was a town request that hasn't been completed, and so we're waiting on
But
that
the-
to occur.
But the request for the continuance came from
I think it's
the,
neutral. I think basically engineering was not complete, and basically the information, so I think both parties I think, he answers appropriately.
But it doesn't,
So
it stops the clock.
If the conditions on the deadline.
Yeah.
And
On that.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not entirely the applicant's fault.
Okay, everyone there? That's the
Second.
motion. Second, Jenny.
Oh,
Next,
it was the 28th?
28th.
Yep. I believe it was
so
the
April,
28th.
April 28th, which would be our next regularly scheduled meeting. Yeah. We made the motion, we got a second,
Second.
Blake, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn,
No,
second, Tim White, all in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
no public
John,
comment, I guess.
Yeah, no public comment on adjournment.
Yeah, right, no, nothing.